Welcome back, everybody. I told you I was swinging for the stars, man, and I got one for you today. Super honored to have today's guest with us. Sure, all of you guys are going to be just as excited to hear what our guest has to say as I do. There's no sense in me rambling. Let's introduce the man, the myth, the legend.
I don't know about that. Paul
Please
Morlock?
just give us a quick introduction. Yeah, introduce yourself for any of these people that may be living in a cave and not know who you are.
My name is Paul Morlock, owner of Rack House. My specialty is gargoyles. I've had experience with all the new cal stuff, but my specialty and my passion is definitely the gargoyles. I first started working with these guys, and I'm going to show my age here. Mid-90s.
Can you give us an estimate?
Mid-90s when I was with Sandfire. Bob Mayu and Alan Rapace were partners, and so my introduction to these guys was through Alan specifically.
Getting. That's awesome.
Yeah, the old days.
So, I mean, since we're talking about the old days, can you give us any information as to, kind of touch on the evolution or maybe the introduction and evolution of gargoyles into the hobby? Maybe how it came to be, how fast they went from one animal into the mainstream? Like, how did these animals, set up shop in the hobby, if you will?
That's a good question, man. For me, it seemed like it took forever. I mean, yeah, because my introduction to these guys was before most people. I mean, I'm not going to say that I was like the first. That's not the case. I mean, the animals were already in homes around the country. But yeah, I mean, the crested gecko craze was just beginning. I mean, Alan was the one who made that happen, really. So that's what I saw. So I had to. Gargoyles didn't get any attention for many years because
the guards come in first.
Gargoyles were in the United States first.
Okay.
Yeah, they were. Gargoyles were already in captivity, even in Germany, for quite a while, as far as
Okay. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, but they didn't, especially they didn't have the color. I don't want to say potential because the potential was there. They didn't have the color availability, that the cresteds. I don't think they were as cute as the crested, right, from a marketing standpoint. And then as a breeder, you're bringing in the animals without question. Well, I don't know what Alan would say. I've never asked him that question, but I'm sure that his choice in crested geckos had something to do with the reproduction rate. Crested geckos have a much higher reproduction rate than gargoyles do. So yeah, that made introducing the animal to everybody a heck of a lot easier, for sure.
So when they kind of, I guess, when you caught wind of gargoyles, you were already into reptiles, right? You were already working with reptiles.
Yeah.
What made you, if anything, know that they were going to be successful when this species crossed your path? What made you say, damn, this is it. This is going to be it?
No, nothing,
Really?
Well, like a couple things that stick out, right? So the first time that I had gone out to California to Alan's place and seeing his facility and going through, he had crested geckos out the wazoo. I mean, there were thousands of crested geckos there, and there weren't nearly as many gargoyles. And he had this one enclosure that had a bunch of hatchlings in it, and most of them weren't I mean, I thought they were cool, but they weren't eye-catching, right? And I just remember walking in. This was in the incubator room, and that he had these babies. And I walked in. I'm looking in this cage, and there was these two babies in there that were red striped, like the real nice ones that we're so familiar with now. And I saw that, and I was like, man, that's awesome. That's I got to have those. And then shortly after that, they were the book, Alan and Philippe's first book came out. And I think it didn't make it into the book, but it was one of the pictures they had taken. And it was of a reticulated gargoyle. It didn't have any pattern color on it, or any base color. It was fired down. So it looked like it was all white, but it had baby blue eyes, almost like, not quite like your shirt, but pretty darn close. And that was the one that sold me. I was like, man, that has got to be one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And then what sparked my passion for them, quite honestly, was when the book first came into the shop, and he opened up the books and he was handing them out. Man, I took it home that night and I read it cover to cover, I'd already been into animals, and I've always, since a little kid, I'm the kind of person that asks why, right? You can't tell me to do something, not to do something without telling me why. Otherwise, I don't buy it. So
And way to be. It's
when
my
I
the
go
only
home and
way to be.
I read through this book, and concerning the gargoyles, right? Because that's what my interest was already sparked in the gargoyles, and I'll never forget because it was the information on lifespan and breeding, and it said, and no fault to them because they were just printing what they understood at the time, right? It said something to the effect that it took 3 years, 2 to 3 years to mature, right, to be able to reproduce. And then they went into menopause, I think, like around 7 or 8 years. So they had like a 5 year breeding window, but they would survive after menopause for another 10 or 15 years. I'm like, the math doesn't math. That's not the way life works, right? So I saw that even these guys who were the leaders in the field didn't have all the answers. And I was already seeing at that point what Alan was doing with crested geckos. And I realized they were different, but at the same time, they're the same. Right. And so what made the crested gecko really what it was is I saw that, I mean, it's the same for all the new Cal stuff, really. What made the crested geckos so popular and such an amazing pet, the gargoyles exhibit all those things, plus a little more. I mean, when we first were talking this evening, I had asked you, what did you like about the Chihuahua? Right. And so I think that if it wasn't for the price point on Chihuahua would be the most popular new cow gecko, without a doubt. The two complaints that I see about gargoyles and cresteds, right? At least from newbies, people that love them no matter what. But a lot of people get afraid of crested geckos because they're flighty and they're nervous and they tend to run. And then there's another section of the population that tends to be a little nervous with gargoyles because, you try to force them to do something, they'll turn around and let you know that it doesn't work that way. And the Chihuahua, right? So the gargoyles, what I think is great about them is their confidence. They have a confidence like
They
even more so
definitely
than the
are.
lychees, to be honest with you. I think the gargoyles have a confidence that you don't see anywhere else.
Yep.
The cresteds, probably their most cool thing is they're gentle, right? I mean, even if they're bastard,
Absolutely.
they're not going to hurt you in any way.
Absolutely.
The Chihuahua are the perfect combination of both of those,
All boxes. That's
right?
what I tell people all the time when they ask me. I typically am like, well, if and I even go as far as saying mainlands just because of the price difference. Mainland is every bit of a Chihuahua as a Pine Island. But I'll always tell, if they ask me what the perfect pet gecko is, I'll always say a mainland Chihuahua. They literally mark all the boxes of something that would make a great pet.
Mm-hmm.
And with what's in, what they're being compared to, you just said it best. They have the confidence of a garg, they have the gentleness of a crested gecko, the inquisitiveness of a leachianus, they're the size of a sericinorum, and all the rest. So they mark all of these boxes. And with the mainland and the prices, they're a little bit cheaper, and they're they're achievable. It's an obtainable goal for someone that wanted something cool. Not to take anything from any of the others. I own them all myself and find something super unique and cool about every single one of them. Yeah, man, Chihuahuas are damn cool, dude.
Yeah, no, they
And
are. I mean, that being said, my passion is still the gargoyles. Don't get me wrong.
absolutely, hell yeah.
I personally still love the gargoyles more than anything.
So speaking of that, what are some of the reasons that maybe you didn't just talk about now that make them your favorite out of all the new cows, since you had experience with them all? What makes the Gargs your favorite?
The confidence and the potential. I mean, even after all these
Love it.
years,
Love it.
I don't even think we
So much
scratched the
potential.
surface.
Not even close.
No,
Not even close. Not even close. Not even really in comparison to, I mean, maybe Sarah Sonorum's, I guess, or is, not as worked with, I guess. I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but there's like so much to be, I mean, there's so much to be discovered with all of them, but there's just, the potential is obvious, but the work just isn't showing, right? Like,
no. For all of these guys, it's a much much longer road than it is with anything else.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely. I agree. I
it.
agree
I mean,
100%.
because of the high degree of polymorphism in these guys, you never until you start getting genes that are like a exanthic and crested, and all, where they're absolute recessive, or they're co-dominant, or they're dominant, or something
Reproduce.
like that. All the breeding for these is a gamble. I mean, so these full six striped red animals that are so popular now, they existed back then, but there
I was just
weren't that
gonna ask.
many. And if you had two of them exactly the same and you bred them together, they didn't make six striped babies. So, it took a long road to get that predictability, and to get, always use the term gene stacking. I don't know if that applies or not, but it was a long road to get predictability for that color and that pattern. A lot of people that are newer in the animals, they take that for granted. That's all they see now, so they think that's
Yeah,
normal, and they don't realize
yeah.
that.
It's just assume that it's going to be with every
Right,
species.
right.
We were talking before that we started recording, and before the show, and we actually got into it. And it was really really interesting to me. We were talking about what you're trying to do. With your red stripe lines, you've been working with them for so long that you can almost predict that pairing two red stripes, you will get red stripes,
Out of
right?
my animals, yeah.
Yeah. But typically, with your animals, yes. But typically, that's not the case, right? Like if you were to take,
No.
say, someone else's animals and you grabbed a red stripe from the East Coast and a red stripe from the Midwest, and you paired them, you're not guaranteed to get red stripes, right?
You're never guaranteed. You know what? Rewind it a little bit, right? Because it's why the NuCal, ancestry is so important, because it does depend on how, again, let's say we're going for red stripes. It depends on how often red stripes were displayed in the ancestry of any one particular animal, right? So that's why mine breed true, right? So out of my group 3, pretty much everything that I've crossed it out to will give me six full red stripes. They're still varied. Am I getting that $10,000 animal every single time? No, no. But do I get 100% six striped animals when bred to another six stripe that's not related? That's out of my. Yes, I do. Yeah. So if you, again, take it from another breeder, and they've been working on nothing but red six stripes, and from that lineage for 5, 6 generations, for whatever it is, are you going to get red stripes from that pairing? 100%. The question is how many do you get, right? So in the beginning, two red stripes, wild animals, you breed them together. Let's say through the lifetime, the animal makes 100 babies. I don't know, with just numbers off the top of my head. You will get a very small percentage of red stripes from those original animals, versus, I guess, you know what it is do you get 1 out of 10, or do you get 10 out of 10? Real simple. Yeah. The longer that particular set of genetics has been bred for in that line, means that you are more likely to get that outcome. And
Yeah.
not only that, are you more likely to get it, you're more likely to get it more often.
So the more saturated that trait is in a bloodline,
Yeah.
the more likely it is to
Yeah.
show itself when paired correctly. But then again, I mean, and I'm not a geneticist by any means. I've also heard of guys. This, I mean, it's a little off topic, but I've heard of guys taking, a striped animal and a blotched animal and putting them together and getting striped animals or blotched animals. So that technically is just polymorphism, no? Is that not like it's not taking after one or the other? That's just
No.
the
No.
DNA of the animal.
So I had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine. She's a friend of a friend of mine. She's a biologist, and she specifically in reptiles. And so I'm talking to her about gargoyles one night, trying to, I guess, strut my stuff and what I understand, and I totally got shot down. The way we understand genetics in the reptile world clearly is not the same terms and the way things work in the real world. Right off the bat, one of the things she corrected me on with the gargoyle, she was like, every single trait, every gene is either recessive or dominant. Every single one, right? That's how they work. Every gene is either recessive or dominant. So
Just makes it easier.
yeah, it does. So that way that changed how I looked at the NuCal stuff, because I've always said that, instead of two animals coming together and the babies reflecting the dominant genetics of mom and dad, the babies seemed originally the babies seem to reflect the genetics of the entire species, not just mom and dad. So your two red stripes in the early days made blotches. It made orange blotches. It made red blotches. It made, half stripes. It made everything. You name it. It was always a surprise. You had no idea what you were going to get. Nowadays, we've changed that. You breed over and over for the same type of genetic. You stack that gene up. It doesn't guarantee your outcome, but it increases the odds of your outcome. And that works for, as far as I can tell, that works for every genetic that is original for gargoyles, whether it's pattern color, base color, pattern, they all seem to work the same.
So
after several years, my question was, okay, so what happens? This is when we were talking earlier. I had mentioned that one of my questions was, okay, so I've got this established red stripe line. What happens if I breed it to another established red stripe line? Are they compatible? Are the genes that are making these red stripes the same genes in both lines? And well, I can't answer that, right? One of the experiments that I did was, okay, so I've got these dominant red stripes. I had another line that's my black and whites that were also a very long-term project, that every animal that was added into it was animals that had no color at all, right? I wanted the blackest black and the crispiest white is what I was looking for. So now they're established. This line does not make reds, oranges, or yellows. It makes white and black. All right. And it is dominant, and what I'll call dominant, not real dominant, right?
Yeah.
So I breed that to my red stripes, which should be dominant, favoring in full 6 red stripes. And so the only way I can explain it is using the analogy of positive and negative numbers, right? So if you go up to a -5 and you add a +5, they kind of cancel each other out. Yeah. That's what I saw when I bred 2 of my dominant opposites, right?
Really?
So a dominant color line to a line that was dominant with no color. They canceled each other out.
What do they look like?
I was hoping I didn't get any baby. It did it for 1 season, and I didn't get a single baby that favored either one of the parents.
Really?
All the babies had aspects, so the base colors were all very light or white. The pattern was typically very dark to a black instead of a brown. Color-wise, very, very little color. Very little. I mean, the color was saturated and it was bright, but it did not cover. I didn't get a single animal that had more than, I don't know, maybe 20% coverage. So
that's interesting. Super interesting. That had me dumbfounded, to be completely honest with you, because I would assume that you'd probably get like a super colorful animal, right? Like putting a bright color on a white canvas, almost like a hypo crested gecko or something like that. I mean, what that's interesting. Is there any known?
This wasn't just a pair. This is a group.
Season, yeah. That's in the same results time and time again, right?
Same results from 1 male to 5 females.
Interesting. Very interesting. What are there any known, like, I guess what are the word we're using now, like dominant genes? Like, is there any known like hypomelanism or anything with the gargs?
Not that I know.
What's the right term for that? Like, what would we use? Just a dominant gene?
Probably the same thing that we're seeing in crested geckos, right? Probably most of those genetic, we'll call them genetic mutations, right, are probably going to be, when they're recognizable, honestly, they're probably either going to be dominant or co-dominant, right? Because the rate, I think because of polymorphism, the odds of catching a recessive trait, unless it's really, really
super tricky,
different. Yeah.
That's
just like these white ones. Dude, I have no idea. We've had the white. Now looking back, now that I can recognize what it is, it is not new. They're not new. They've been around for a long. My first one, I got in the early 90s, but I didn't know what it was. I thought it was just a variation, a natural variation.
What do you think that it is? Because I saw one. Well, I've been seeing it now. This guy, he's fairly new to geckos, I believe, but like Sergeant Geckos, I think is his Instagram name. He has one. And I had saw you and David, I think, on Tiki's Gecko, David talking about this animal somewhere. You were involved, Dave was involved. or maybe it's just because you have them and he has them. But now there's a third person that I know that has one. When I saw it, I was like, holy shit, that's the animal that David and Paul are talking about. This guy's got one, and I don't even think he knows what he's got. He named him Iceman, but this thing is white, like fired up, fired down. He's white, like with these crazy blue eyes. So I don't know what's going on. And like I said, I'm not thinking that this kid even knows what he has,
No,
but
I'd have to see, right, because there is a problem associated with that to some degree, right? So they're not all gargoyles are the same, you know, even within the natural range. So the question on what are these, what I think they're either would be labeled under hypomelanistic or some sort of amel, because they
yeah,
still have melanin in the eyes, so it's not a true albino. But that's tricky because the animals already naturally fire up and fire down. And within that range, I have animals that are black and they never go white. They stay black all the time. Even if I put them on white paper towel under a bright white light, they will still be black. And I have some animals that stay fired down all the time. So their main display, they look white, but they're just fired down. So, you know, it can be tricky.
there's
But
something going on. And again, we could
no, it
talk
is.
about this to a blue in the face. Like, yeah, you guys that are doing this hard work are definitely getting closer. Um, it's super commendable too that you guys are sticking to the script and not just being like, "Oh, this is it," and taking it for face value. Like, I admire you guys that are still prying here. Like,
We don't even know how it works.
this is you're right on the cusp of this, man. I don't know how to explain it. I can't even articulate what I see, but I'm super observant, and I can see what's going on is very close to being uncoded, if that makes any sense.
Well, you know
Just
what?
almost by the consistency, like in the more you guys know. And I'm in a minute, I want to talk about the pastel things, but I think there's something with that pastelish line of gargoyles people are working with too. I think a lot of things are getting ready to start clicking for you guys.
No, the more like we were talking about earlier, the more people that are working with them, the
Hmm.
more
Yes.
projects the more goals there are, right? And there is. I mean, especially we've already done all the hard work, right? All the breeders that have been working with these guys for the last 25 years have done the real hard work. So
Yes.
we're going to go on a little. I'm getting a little because I wanted to say something about the white ones. So
I'm
Bree,
sorry. Go back. You cut me off because I just start going everywhere.
I just had somebody contact me a couple of days ago that they were looking for a black and white, right? Because they have this idea of this gecko in their mind and they want to make it. And she was asking questions about how different genetics work, and she was explaining how what she was looking for in the geckos that she was looking for in order to make this. And in her explanation, because of polymorphism, I saw what she was doing was she was going the long way, right? I mean, her the way she was going at it, it was completely like a lottery, right? You'd have to win the lottery several times in a row to be able to make the animal that she wants. The way that I've done it in my collection, because of polymorphism, I find that it is a much shorter road. It's still a long road. It's still years, but it's a much shorter road to concentrate on single traits instead of several traits in one animal, right? And so the way that I've approached it is if I can I'm trying to isolate certain genes is what it comes down to. Because once I
There you
isolate
go.
them and I
Smart
know
thing to
that
do.
it's there, then I can control it a little bit better and spread it out and add it to different things. So she was basically looking for her, I mean, her goal was these beautiful looking animals. She wants black and white animals with these heavy, you know, very thick, heavy black patterning. And so my suggestion was, and she was looking for striped animals specifically, right? I mean, so your odds of you're finding that animal that you want, they're pretty slim. You got to break it down. So I was like, do it in several different projects. First, work on black and white, right? So that's one set of traits. Isolate that. When you can get a line where you're isolating that, you then have another group where you're working on pattern, right? It doesn't matter what the pattern, striped, reticulated, doesn't matter. The trait you're looking for is heavy, thick, black pattern. Just make those. Once you get that under control, where you have some predictability and you can make animals with heavy, thick pattern, Then you can take that and you can blend that to your nicest black and whites. And then you're making black and white animals with heavy, thick pattern. So I've done the same
Yeah.
thing all the way around with every trait, whether it be big horns, short face, blue eyes, face color, pattern color, whatever have you.
That's a brilliant way to do it, though, and it's almost you're almost set. I don't want to say you're set for anything in this hobby, but you're setting yourself up very well for success and bettering the hobby and bettering the understanding by doing that. I never really thought about it like that, but breed for individual things, isolate these genes, to some type of predictability, so you
Yeah,
can you're controlling that. You're
yeah,
decreasing the odds of getting other stuff and increasing the odds of what you want by doing it. It's a brilliant piece of advice, in all honesty.
yeah.
It
And
kind of.
lineage makes more difference too.
I was just
Like
gonna
I often
say,
explain that I would rather have, like, say I'm trying to breed for big horns. I would rather have the animal that came from a line that regularly produces big horns, but this particular animal has small horns, than have an animal with ginormous horns that comes from a line that's never produced them ever before. Right? Again, because I'm playing the numbers. And it comes to that one animal, he might be able to reproduce them, but your odds or how many he's going to remake are much lower than an animal that has a history of making it. Your odds of getting it from that animal are much bigger. Now,
I agree a
the
hundred
white
percent.
the white gene. Okay, so odds, because this comes back to odds. All right, so we don't even know how the white gene works yet. I'm not convinced it's recessive. David and I have had this talk. His theory was that it was recessive, and that was how he was shooting at it. But like I said, it's been out there for a long time. My first one was in the 90s. I didn't realize what it was, but I tried to recreate it. I knew it was different because it came out of the egg white. Its clutch
Really,
mate was normal colored and it was white. The same thing with the ones we have now. They come out of the
yeah,
egg, they're white. So if it existed all the way back then, why haven't we seen more of them? Right? I mean, we've made enough. I bred that animal. Okay, so let's say it's recessive. Just from me, as many as I produced and sold, that gene is out there, right? It's all the way out. It's all over the place. But my theory on how genetics work for these guys. All right, so we'll use the example of the phantom eye, the black eye. It's a highly desirable trait. People love the black eyes. I believe that the vast majority, if not all, gargoyles have the genetics for black eyes. It's not an isolated thing. And the analogy I use for that, the only way I can make it make sense is dice, right? If you have six dice, all six dice always have the numbers 1 through 6. All right. So let's say phantom eyes are 6. You have to have all sixes to get phantom eyes to display. But at every single roll of the dice, those sixes are there. They're just not necessarily displayed. Right. So that's what I think is happening with the phantom eyes. I think that's what happens basically with all the traits. And this white trait, whatever it is, might not that could explain the randomness and why it hasn't popped up more often at
yeah,
this point.
it makes sense, man. It makes a lot of sense. I damn sure never thought of it that way, but your hand is made up of the same digits and numbers, right? Every time you shake your hand, the same numbers are in your hand. Every time you let those dice go, it's the same numbers hitting the table, but they're not
It's a specific
likely going
sequence to
to
get a
line up at the same
specific
time every
display.
time. You just put it. That's brilliant. I like that. And it makes sense. It makes sense. It makes sense. Being that nobody really has any of these, dominant genes or known genes or whatever, would only make sense that every animal is the same set of genes and they're just
Just randomly
they're
popping up. What comes up? The roll of
yeah,
the dice.
yeah, they're randomly presenting themselves in any configuration possible. When the right configuration lines up in the animal, this is what you get. There's got to be a scientific name for that, though. We
No,
can't be the only ones to
I'm
with it.
sure
There's got to be.
polymorphism.
Yeah,
That's the definition of
pretty
it.
much. You ain't lying. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
No, I mean,
You're
because
right.
in an island species that are think about this for a second. Okay, so this applies to both gargoyles and lychees. An island species, they are both apex predators. They are both more than likely living 40 plus years, right? How many in the wild, I don't know. But these animals they're breeding into their 30s, okay? That doesn't happen just because of captivity. They're still reproducing into their 30s. That means it has to be happening in the wild. No, I don't know what instance or what occurrence, but it has to be happening. So now you have an island. You have apex predators that are living 30 years or better. They are inbreeding. So how does Mother Nature solve that problem? Polymorphism is the answer. All the genes come out in every single animal, but not all the genes are displayed in every single animal. That way you don't get genetic bottlenecking unless you have, the exact same thing breeding
Makes
over and
sense.
over and over again, which,
You got my head going like this today because I've never had to really think of this like this. Now, you were talking earlier about parthenogenic eggs with the gargs. Have you ever hatched any? Have you ever successfully hatched any parthenogenic eggs from gargs?
I have hatched a couple, but I have not raised any.
Do they all look the same? That's what I was getting at. Like, do they even look the same? Can you have
See,
two parthenogenic eggs from a garg that look totally different?
yeah.
Because that would be a dead ringer right there. If that's what's
Well,
happening.
so yes, so that actually brings up more questions. All right. So we've had twins. Twins are not uncommon in Rhacodactylus. All right. I've had twin gargoyles that, and now in my case, I've never had twins go to adulthood. Usually because when you have twins, they are freaking tiny, and it's a struggle bus to get them going. But I've had instances where the longest I've had twins go is about 2 months. I've had instances where the two animals visually, I couldn't tell the difference, right? So, and that doesn't happen in these animals, right? I mean, they don't come out looking the same. So the idea that those are actually twins, pretty high. But I've also had animals come out twin eggs that don't look anything like each other. Almost never do these twins look like mom. All right, so that's another set of questions. All right, so but polymorphism is playing a role here, right?
Yeah,
And
sure is.
polymorphism is important for their long-term survival. So where where does that come into play when you're talking about twinning and parthenogenesis? What the heck was I reading, man? Oh, was it the morning geckos? Okay, so this is a very good example. So when I first got my morning geckos and I was doing the research on them, almost everything I found online said that males didn't exist, which I thought was crazy. But a lot of information said males don't even exist. So what sparked me on this is another night, right? Or another morning, I go out there to work on my animals, and I hear my morning geckos. I hear they're making all kinds of crazy noises, and I've heard them argue, but this is different. I shine the light up there. There's two animals on the front of the enclosure hooked together, right? I'm
Shit.
going, two females? They're like, what are they doing? And so I open the door real quick. I grab them, and as I grab them, I can see that the one is inside the other, right? So it's not two females, it's a male and a female. And I'm going, holy
You're
shit.
blowing my top right now because I never knew this.
I
Keep
didn't
going.
I didn't know everything I had read said males were super, super rare or they didn't exist. So now I've got this male in there, so I start researching it more. And I end up talking to this lady in Europe, and she had told me that what she sees is like maybe 1 in 500 are male in her collection.
I never knew that, Paul. I never knew that. I thought they were all only female. I didn't even know a male morning gecko could exist.
Well, hold on.
Oh shit.
So think about this for a second, okay? So morning geckos are cloning themselves, right? So from what I've read, there's a bunch of different methods of parthenogenesis. Not all of them are cloning per se.
Hmm.
So from what I understand, morning geckos are cloning themselves. It's the fastest way to reproduce, right? I mean, if you're the bottom of the food chain and your life depends on reproduction, it makes sense. This is the fastest reproduction possible. But there's a problem with that. If you're making a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, you lose genetic information. So how does this species keep on going? And so when I read that there's like 1 in 500 males, I'm thinking to myself, because I see in my enclosure, I'm watching this male breed every single female in there. So this lady that I talked to in Europe, she says, yeah, she sees like 1 in 500 are males, but they're infertile. And I ask her, I'm like, well, how do you know they're infertile? And she couldn't answer the question, obviously, right? I mean, if he's breeding the heck out of them and they're already parthenogenesis and they're laying eggs, how the hell do you know they're infertile? And what I'm assuming the reason she was saying that is because after having mine, I go through my females with a loop, right? And I'm looking at all of them, trying to find the differences. And there are differences in them, right? They are not identical, so you can tell the difference. But most of them are pretty freaking close. And so I pulled this
Really?
male out, and I look at the male under the loop, and he is nowhere near any of the males. I mean the females looks completely different. I don't have an explanation for it. I don't know how, but my theory is their solution is they're cloning themselves. So this 1 in 500 ish, however it happens, is new DNA. And he comes out and he starts breeding all the local females, and the whole cycle starts all over again.
This is my mind is blown right now. My
It
mind is
makes,
blown.
whether that's the case or not, I'm not
Crazy.
sure, but it makes sense. Yeah. So, I mean, then that begs more questions. All right. So, as far as I
All
know,
kinds of questions.
parthenogenesis, females can only use their own DNA. Right.
But
So,
the parthenogenesis gecko made a male, right?
right. So, I don't understand the concept to that, but okay, that opens the
Crazy.
doors for other stuff. So maybe when our new Caldone stuff, maybe when we get these twins, they are the twins coming out of the same egg. They may not be, in fact, genetic twins, right? Because of parthenogenesis, they could be
Yeah.
completely different, although they're the same, right? And so even in parthenogenesis, if the mourning geckos can do it, these are island species, you know, what would be the advantage? Oh, you're on an island. You're a gecko on an island. You're capable. You can do parthenogenesis, right? But it's only your DNA, and all you can produce are females. So, what advantage would that have if you got washed up on the shore of an island where there were no males? That it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? I mean, because I don't see a real advantage to that, unless
No.
somehow under certain conditions, right, a male can be made from female DNA.
I'm surprised science, like the mainstream science, isn't totally infatuated with that alone, just in mourning geckos. You know what I'm saying? Because there's some giant organizations out here that if they focused on that, I'm sure they would
Right,
figure it out, right?
right.
But like, why is some university, some crazy university, not been like, this could be the answer to all the issues we're having with stem cells crap and limb rejuvenation and stuff? Like, damn, that's some crazy stuff in a small little thing there that apart the whole basis, the whole definition of parthenogenesis is thrown on its head right there by something that it's done by producing a male. Oh, it's so just it's a,
Well, everything that we think we know, we don't really know.
you're absolutely right. It's what I was just getting ready to say. And that's human nature for you. Think we know everything just so we can get proven wrong.
I mean, look at the definition of an albino. How many how many albinos do we have, and not just the boas, but how many albinos do we have out there now in reptiles that still produce melon to some degree?
You ain't lying, and I'm still
Not,
trying to figure
nothing
that
is
one myself.
absolute.
Kind of like, yeah, like we were talking, like I mentioned earlier with the toe case. I thought that there was one type of albino until the other day. I was talking to a buddy and he said, nope, there's clearly two different types of albinos. And I'm like, how is there two different types of albino? He was like, well, you could take this albino and this albino, you breed them together and they'll make regulars. But if you took, albinos from this line, you put them together, you will continue to make albinos. I'm like, well, what? The sense does that? It didn't even register to me as to what I know of as an albino. But and I'm still on the journey of trying to figure out the answers for that. But there's a lot of unknowns, a
I think
lot of
that's an
things that we
endless
could.
journey.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, genetics in general, man, genetics in general are just super interesting, and I'd imagine that a lot of people involved in this hobby may not be the sole purpose of being in, working with reptiles in general, but it's got to be like a significant factor, right?
I think for a lot
Like
of
the
people it is.
interest of what genes are doing here and stuff, because it's
Gargoyles are different even in the fact that, right, so the color,
hmm,
with a lot of other animals, we can manipulate reds, oranges, and yellows and stuff separately. So far, I haven't been able to do that in gargoyles. So I don't think color in gargoyles works that way. I kind of think color, pattern color, we're talking about, right? So the
yep,
stripes or the blotches,
yep,
um, or even base color, it's an individual, but I think it still works the same way. I think that color is a set of genetics, and depending on how that gene is expressed, defines the color, right? So all color is the same: red, orange, and yellow. It's the same set of genetics. Red would
absolutely.
be like 100%. Yellow, orange would be 50% expression. Yellow would be 25% expression, for example.
You have an amazing talent, Paul, for articulating these things in a way that people can grasp it. Because if I was talking to like a, I'm not saying you're not or knocking you, but if you were like a geneticist, my head would just be spinning. I'm like, what the is going on right now? But just the way you put things with all of those colors being on the same spectrum and them expressing themselves in different concentrations makes it like, whoa, like, okay, like it makes it so much more palatable. It's you have a gift. You have a gift for explaining a very complicated thing.
Thank you.
It's very unique.
It's what I've seen. I'm just explaining what I've seen. You know, when
That's
when I
that's. Have
when
you,
I
so have
tried
you
to
ever
make
seen?
yellows, I couldn't
Yeah,
make yellows to save my life. Right
really.
in the
Is
early
it
days.
done?
What's
Do
that?
people make yellows? Can is it something? Do people? I've never seen one. Do
Well,
people? Can you make a yellow guard?
yeah. I mean, I have two different lines now that are
You do.
consistent yellow by the same thing I did before. I said, by isolating. Well, all right.
Isolating
So
each.
when I first saw yellows, like really really nice poppy yellows, I want to reproduce that. So I buy the yellowest animals I can find and I breed them, and they only make orange for the most part. Back then they only made red. Every once in a while I get some oranges in there, but for the most part they made red, never yellow. And so why can't I can't then I wanted to make orange too because they were just as pretty in my opinion. And oranges were just as difficult. Some of that I think is because of, again, going back to gene stacking, right? So here in the US, red stripes was the most popular. That's what everybody bred for. So if you bred for red stripes in the beginning, you made 100 animals a year, you got two red stripes, but the other 98 animals still had genetics for red stripes, right? So you keep doing that over and over. And now what I see is in the United States, the vast majority of animals genetically favor red stripes. So to make something other than that, and especially to go backwards, seemed to be almost impossible. So my yellows, I started with, like I was telling you before, my black and whites. I had a nice line of black and whites that didn't produce any colors, but even out of them, there's a variance. Not all of them were perfect black and whites. Some of them would be, straw colored and brown, not crispy black and white. So those were the animals that I held back for the yellows, and I worked on that, and that was what it took to isolate that yellow gene to where I could breed those adults and not make oranges or reds and only make yellows.
And you did it though. You
Yeah,
did it.
no, it did. That's
Have
why.
you?
That's one of the reasons why I think that it confirms
Yeah.
that the genetics appear to be, for color, pattern color specifically, one set of genetics expressed to different degrees.
Have you ever seen two colors on the same animal? Have you ever gotten orange and yellow together?
Yeah, that's a good one, right? So as of now, I mean, I have a couple of animals that I'll call yellow blotches and stuff, but I wouldn't sell them that way. They're not marketable technically as yellow. So far, yellow, I have yet to see yellow as a real pattern color. It comes in base color, and sometimes it can manifest in the stripes. But I've never seen a yellow blotch, and I've never seen like what I would call a real yellow striped animal.
That's interesting
So
too, and I
that's
wonder
one of the
why. I
goals.
wonder why that is. You have any ideas on why that is? Why just because it's been worked so much to saturate the red
For
so
the
much that lower end of the scale is just not existent anymore.
Yes, yeah, yeah. The same,
Makes
the same,
sense. Makes sense.
the same reason why, right? Even the blotches just a couple years ago. Now they've become much more popular. But even I want to say even like when I first came back to Florida, so within 7 years, right, blotches have become a little bit more common. Before that, they weren't desirable. The retic pattern wasn't desirable. It was a stripe pattern. And then when the blotches started becoming really popular, is when they were kind of unobtainable because you couldn't, most genetics. I mean, even if you had blotched animals and you bred them, they probably gave you some degree of stripes. So getting those really nice blotched animals was difficult, man. To get a male for me, it was a struggle, man. It probably took me a dozen years before I got a really nice blotched male. I had to make it. I couldn't buy one.
I bet. I haven't been doing new cows for ever, right? Maybe probably 6 years, 7 years ish, maybe. But it's funny you say that because the quality, since I can visually see it. The stripes where people were working on the stripes, people were bettering the stripes, and then a little bit of attention went to the blotches, and then before you know it, there was super blotches, and then they're super popular. It's like I don't know how to explain it, but you can almost see where the attention is by how fast the quality of the animals
Yeah,
show
now
up.
it's face color, head and face color.
Yeah, it's
That's the
super
next goal. That one's gonna,
interesting.
although, see, I'm when it comes to now, I find, which is I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot. Now that there's more people breeding them, I'm not the only one making these really elusive colors and patterns anymore. There's people are making them all over the place. When I first started selling animals overseas, I knew this was going to happen. I
Really?
had sold some animals, a bunch of animals to a couple people overseas, and they were buying from one specific line, and I was trying to get them to take animals from several different lines.
Yeah.
Same look, but unrelated animals, and they didn't want them. They wanted the 1%, and they didn't care where it came from. And it hit me that so I have in my collection I have a rule. Like in the new cows, I think you can breed related animals quite a bit without having problems. I don't do it. I don't breed related animals at all. They have to be separated by at least 3 generations before I put them back together. Right?
Any
So
reason, or is it
yeah, so I can maintain genetic integrity over the long term was the idea behind it. Um, you know what? And maybe it's old school from breeding, dragons and leopards and doing other
your
things.
preference? I mean, I don't do it either. I've never paired anything to
No,
a
but now you have people out there that and
yes.
because with these particular animals, it is safer, right? I can't deny that they've evolved by inbreeding, so it is safer. But what I realize is, there are now people out there that are buying the top 1% animals from me and David and
Right.
everybody else, and then breeding even from me, right? Like I said in that example, I know this one person bought several high end animals and they bred them together,
Put
which
them together.
is not something I would do. But the advantage they're getting is they're going to make animals even way better than what I'm making.
And that's a tricky one, because you have the human morals involved, right? And I again, I'm not judging anybody. I wouldn't do that, but that's simply my human morals telling me not to, right? And me, I guess, assuming that I'm making a more sound animal by not doing that. But I also just learned that like 90% of the leopard gecko morphs
Oh yeah,
are only here because
line
of
broke.
direct sibling to sibling inbreeding. Like I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And for argument's sake, the majority of them, from what I know, are technically okay. They're healthy, right? Like I don't know of any, not many morphs that I guess I could say are like other than these new black knights and everything are saying they're, this is notorious for a wobble or notorious to, come out with this issue or that issue. I never would have known if I wasn't told, like, hey, listen, how do you think they got all these morphs, Aunt? Like they're breeding brother to brother, brother to sister, father to daughter. Like that is how they got them, was inbreeding. If it weren't for inbreeding, you wouldn't have 90% of them. It's like, oh, okay, all right, I guess.
The question is, how far do you take that? I
Hmm.
think
Yeah, you're
if you've
right.
got something different, I mean, just like these white animals, I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. How am I going to try to understand it and
You
try to
have
reproduce
to.
it? I have two
Yeah.
choices. I have to take the animals that show it and either breed them back to parents or back to siblings. I mean, that's the only way.
Is there a safer way to go, do you think? Like if you had to, would it be any safer to go to a direct sibling or to a parent? Does it even matter?
Yeah, I think going back to a parent is a hell of a lot safer than going back to a
Safer?
sibling. Yeah, I mean, because a parent's only 50% genetic.
50%.
Yeah, where a sibling. Oh, but again, right? So with that argument, I'm shooting myself in the foot, right? Polymorphism. So just because they are from the same parents, in my opinion, doesn't mean they are the same genetically. Although they are. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd almost be better going to the parent then, I guess, because it's at least guaranteed 50%, right?
Well,
If you mix another parent in, it could be 100% the same, but it could also be like double the opposite, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if damn,
In this case,
this is
we're going
brain.
back to the parent for this
Yeah.
next round.
Okay.
And if that doesn't work, then I have a sibling that's lined up.
Is this your first season with those? Have you had any success? Anything you're willing to share, or
First
is it
season
all
of
just still under wraps?
this will be the first season actually
Oh, it is.
breeding. Well, okay, so technically, like I said, I had that white one many years ago, and I bred the crap out of that boy. I mean, I had
It
him
was a
with so
male
many
too.
females. Say that again.
Really? It
Yeah,
was a male.
yeah, it was a male, and he was around when I was still doing a lot of breeding experiments. So back then too, doing groups and gargoyles, almost everything that I do now was an evolution of some sort, right? So you have a problem and you figure out how to solve the problem. And almost every single time, solving that problem will then create another problem or two more problems that you have to solve and get around. All of the keeping is that exactly. It's a series of problems and trying to solve those problems. And so the gargoyles, their groups are honest. Keeping them groups is not all. If for the health of the animal and long term of the animal is probably not the best thing because sharp teeth and thin skin, they don't go well together. But now that being said, problem solving, right? So there's ways you can set up the cages. There are certain things that you can do to mitigate all of that stuff. And that was a long process to learn how to do that. Now I've lost my whole train of thought again because we were talking about the white one.
With the groups and the pairing and the white pairing, trying to what your
So this white animal that I had many years ago. So I had bred him at any given time. I was experimenting with group sizes. So I was doing any 1.1 all the way up to I think the biggest I did was 1.10, 10 females to one male. So he got bred to a lot of females, and the babies that I held back from some of them came out. Nothing ever hatched white like he did, but I had a lot of them that were really really nice black and whites, especially as they got older. Bred those females back to him and was never able to recreate what he was. That's why I kind of think that this trait is not a recessive trait the way that we
yeah.
understand them typically.
It
So
makes sense what you were saying before with the dice and
yeah,
that this the way the genes, the dice tumble, if you will. If those
I'd have to talk to
markers.
David again to see where he is at with his project now. But last time, to my understanding, he had bred a visual back to a sibling. And I don't know if he recreated it or not. I'm sure if he did, we probably would have
I
heard
haven't
about
Dave
it.
would have posted or something. I didn't hear
Yeah.
about it.
Um, yeah,
That's
because
super interesting.
I was telling him that I didn't feel like it was recessive at that point either. So we'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
I think you would have proven it. I think you would have proved if it was. I
Well,
mean,
so the animal I have one visual now. I have one visual and two siblings to it. The ones that we have now actually started with Kelly's collection, and it was, if I remember correctly, I think it was a male that came from me with one of her females, and that's what was producing. Now there is a hiccup in this, and unfortunately, from my end, it may not ever be anything more than it is right now. The one female that I have now, she is smaller. She's not a 50, 60 gram animal. And in that group, so Kelly had raised an offspring from that same pair and had it in another group. And in the couple years that she was making them, she had white ones come from the original pair. I think she had 7 altogether. And then she had 1 or 2 come out of the pairing from the offspring from that pair. So initially, when we were kind of tracing it down, we were kind of thinking that maybe it was coming from the female. I don't know. That was her guess. I'm not sure that I follow that either, but I don't know. We'll see.
how's the Garg community? Is it you would feel like with this, you guys being on the cusp of like discovering something totally game changing, that some of these people you sold some of these animals to or may have these animals would all be looking for each other like, hey, listen, I got one, let's figure this out here, like, is the gargoyle community, is there one, like, is it super close, do you
Not
guys work with each other?
no, probably not. Not like that. No. I mean, on Facebook, there's a couple gargoyle groups and stuff like that. So I guess actually not. It might have been 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half. Um, in one of the Facebook groups, a white one popped. Or it looked.
Real.
I mean, I recognized it as a white one, but when the post was made, it was unsure what it was. And so when I contacted the person who posted it, and go figure that the male that produced it was an animal from me. And it was unrelated to the line that I have that was producing them. So now I have at least two males in my collection that carry the genetics, because it's two animals that come from those males. I mean, we're not seeing it. So
This is an interesting one, man. This has got me wanting to get gargoyles now. I mean, it's like
that's why
I got a hunch you're absolutely right with the whole genetic,
the one that the
just
first one that David had,
polymorphism.
first one that David bought, it's not one he produced. We were at Daytona. This was like, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. You know, when we go, I'm focused on setting up for the shows. And so I'm trying to get everything done. And Kelly, usually once we get the animals clean, she goes out before the show starts and has a look around, right? So this is probably like 4 or 5 years ago at the Daytona show. She's out looking around, and she's a typical girl. She sees something she likes, she's got to have it, right? No matter what. So it's not uncommon for her to come back with a fistful of animals and say, "We got to get these." And so I'm setting up, and I think we were a bit late because I was stressed. I wasn't really paying attention to her so much. She came over with this animal, and she goes, "Paul, you got to see this gargoyle I saw." And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, "Wow, it's white. Not fired down off white. It's white, and the pattern is kind of ghosted out. It looked different. It was an orangey ghosted out." I asked how much, and I didn't have the cash on me, and I was like, "Well, you know what? Let's see if we can do a couple sales first, and then we'll go back and we'll get it." And so we do a couple sales, and she goes back to get it, and it's freaking gone. Of course, it's gone. And then probably not even 10 minutes later, David walks up. He's like, "Check out what I got." And so we're both kicking ourselves, yeah. But
What are you gonna do,
no,
man? That's. I do believe you'll figure it out, though. Who produced that animal? Do you remember?
the one that David had, I do not know who produced it, but they didn't even know what it was. They
That's
didn't
what I'm
know either.
saying. So someone
No,
someone else has got it.
yeah,
You know,
no,
unless it's animals that aren't looking like it, Paul, that are making it. Unless it's some weird thing where it's like, I don't even know what the right terminology would be, but like, say every time it's a specific look that makes that, right? Like maybe it's only, for argument's sake, orange blotches are making them.
so that was one of Kelly's theories, because so far, at least the animals, with the exception of that first one that I had many years ago, all the animals that we've seen up to this point are coming from really, really red animals. But, okay, let's just say my theory is correct, and it is all about gene stacking. That would actually make sense, because red stripes have been the most bred trait
Yeah.
overall. And so if that gene is handed down with every single generation, it's just a matter of rolling the dice to get it displayed, then that means that that gene should be stronger in lines where it's been repeated over and over and over again, right? So if it,
Which would mean, in theory, we'll just start seeing more of them happenstancely. We'll just start
I
popping
think
up
so,
more now.
yeah, yeah. But you know what? I mean, mutations can. All right, so like even when I was working for Sandfire, I always find this amazing. Okay, so all the years that Bob had dragons, and that, I mean, this was before me even. I mean, he was doing it for many years, way before I came along, right? But by the time I started working with Bob, the only mutation in bearded dragons was the hypo trait, and he had just realized that and started isolating it and breeding for it around that time. All right, so dragons had been in captivity for probably a dozen years or more, probably more than that, in the United States before that. And so nothing popped out. All right. And then we pop out the translucent shortly after that. I, yeah. So as far as I know, all right. So the way that it worked back then, I did dragons. It was East Coast rep for Bob. My dragon collection started with hypo animals. So every single dragon in my collection was a hypo. Several years into it, out pops this thing that's completely different. I can see through it. And I'm like, "What the hell is this?" And I raise it up, and it's got black eyes, and you can see through it. It comes from a hypo trait, so a lot of my hypos were reds and oranges. So as it starts to grow, the color starts coming in, and it's just like electric, dude. This animal's awesome. And I don't tell anybody. I keep it a secret, right? Even Bob. Honestly, man, I didn't even tell Bob. I kept it a secret. And so this animal's 2 years old, and I'm ready to breed it now. And Bob calls me up one day, or we're talking on the phone, whether he called me up or not, I don't know. But we're talking on the phone, and he tells me about this group of dragons that he just imported from Germany, and they're different. And so he ends up sending me pictures of them, and I look at them, and I'm like, holy shit, they're translucent. But these are normal dragons. They're not hypos, right? So they have melanin, right? Mine didn't have any melanin, so they were nice and clean. The original translucents that still had melanin in them, they were dirty and muddy, and they kind of looked purple. They weren't very attractive, to be totally honest. But here I am. I still didn't tell Bob, and I'm looking at it going, holy shit. And these hatched the same year. Okay, so in 20 something years, dragons have been in captivity, no morphs. And then all of a sudden, this translucent pops up, one in Germany. My animals came from Bob originally, right? So we can say that mine came from Bob. And then I go and I do the very first Tinley show, the very first Tinley Expo, and I was representing Sandfire. And we're setting up, and I get all set up, and I go walking around, and there's this dude. To this day, I have no idea who it was. I don't know who it was then. I don't know who he is now. But he's got this dragon out on his table in this big, huge display, and it's purple. And he's got this big thing on it, brand new dragon morph. It's called the Purple Dragon. And I'm looking at it going, holy shit, that's a translucent. That's the same thing, right? So it always bugged me. How is this animal? How is this bearded dragon and now they were in captivity in Germany for even longer than they came here, right? So outside of Australia, they're in captivity outside of Australia for a decade, 2 decades at least, and nothing unusual pops out. And then the same year, 3 we can maybe call them unrelated. I mean, maybe all the dragons in the United States came from Bob originally, but at least the German line and Bob's were not related, right? So that's 2 unrelated lines that this. And here's another thing too, all right? So when this translucent trait first pops out, albinism is lacking melanin, right? We have axanthic, axanthic. We have all these other different things. So what the hell is this? And I'm trying to research. And so it's the iridophores, right? The pigments that make white and the pigments that make the iridescent, right? Like in rainbow boas and stuff like that. Those are the iridophores. And so I've realized that these dragons, they're missing the iridophores. They're missing the white scales, that iridescence and the white. And they have black eyes. All right. So and this is not an albino. This is a completely new mutation. Like I've never seen anything like this before. And so how does this happen in multiple collections? At the end of the day, I was aware of 3 separate collections in the United States, the same year that hatched them, and the one in Germany. All right. So 4 instances of this same mutation happening in the same year when they never showed up before. Like, how does that happen? Right? I mean,
it would make sense.
It's
what
crazy.
We're talking about the genes eventually breeding themselves into. I don't know, man. That's gnarly. That's like that's really. So, what do you think?
Dude, I have no idea. Right?
Did you name translucents?
No.
Was that your name?
No, that's what we were calling them. But I guess
I have one. They're just pets. My 2 bearded dragons. But arguably, I mean, not to don't let anybody hear you. I have 2 bearded dragons. They're probably like my 2 favorite pets, man. They're like so freaking cool, dude. Like they're awesome. But my female is a translucent. She's like this crazy orange, like safety orange translucent with these black eyes. She's badass. And my male's a hypo. He's a bright yellow hypo, badass male. It's funny you bring all that up because like never met you or knew what you did with these, and like everything you've done has somehow found its way into my living room. Freaking cool.
All right, so this black eye translucent trait, totally unique, right? I've never seen it in anything else in the dragons. And so this is probably 10 years ago because I was still living up north. This is at White Plains. I'm walking through the show, and I can't remember who the breeder was. It was a leopard gecko breeder. And I'm walking by the table, and I'm glancing, right? Not really looking. I wasn't into leopard geckos, but he had Pictus on the table. And so I stop and I look at the Pictus, and I'm like, those look different. And I pick it up, and I was like, dude, can you mind if I take this out of the container? He's like, no, go ahead. And I pop it out, and I'm like, I almost shit myself. It's translucent. And it's got black eyes, jet black eyes, right? So it's the same whatever the trait is in the bearded dragons, it's the same mutation in Peridora pictus, which I think is pretty crazy.
It is.
But
It is.
clearly,
Like drawing
it's a genetic
patterns
anomaly of
here
some sort.
because I feel like there's a trend here with everything we've just talked about. There's a trend, and it almost seems like time in the hobby is all landing on this same kind of an outcome, right?
It is.
And what are we doing other than compounding, like you said with the guards, compounding a particular sought after gene, which is ultimately ending in something that we weren't expecting, which ultimately leads to another gene or trait in itself.
Yes.
Like this could very well be what this white thing is, man. It's about that time, right? I mean,
Yeah, it is. Well, there is another. All right, so I have never seen one personally. I've only seen pictures of it. I've seen a couple of videos. They're in Europe, and I think maybe Poland. There was another one in Poland. Gargoyles, translucent.
no shit.
Yeah, you
Is
can
that the
see
purple thing? I thought that is it purple? Because I
there.
thought it purple, and I thought it came from you. I thought it was someone who was calling it pastel or something. They said I got it from Paul.
I
I thought that
do.
was
I do
yours.
have pastels that are
Oh, sweet.
all the past, and at least in my collection, all they are is it's a red based derivative. You know, where
Oh,
they're really light, and so they give the appearance anywhere from a like a pink to a purple color. They don't get really red per se. So that, but that's, I guess that's gene stacks, the same
that's
thing.
not the
Yeah,
translucent
no,
though. That's not because I haven't seen anything myself either. No.
no. This was probably a recessive or a codominant trait, and they're not completely translucent. They're just like the dragons and the pictus. All right, so what I started calling them was hypo iridescent, both in the Pictus and the dragons, because what I saw in the dragons, the same thing I see in the Pictus. They're not all the same. Some may
Yeah.
be missing a little bit of the white. Some may be missing almost all of it. So there are different degrees of it, and I think that's what in these individuals that I saw in the gargoyles, I would kind of
Yeah.
put them in the same category because they weren't completely translucent,
Mm-hmm.
but you could definitely see it in the belly, no doubt.
Very interesting. Very interesting. It's super alluring. And I know said this and mentioned it before we started recording, but it's like if there was ever a species of gecko in the hobby that had a promising future, right? Like enough work's been done for people to be interested, but there's still so little done that the future is just yours,
Wide open.
right? Like it's so interesting. Now I don't want to go right field on you, but we're talking about genetics. You seem to be the leading source of information on these male makers. What can you teach me about maybe that's genetic? What can you teach us about these male and female genetic related sex determination versus temp sex dependent? Because I've heard guys argue that they're sex dependent. I've heard guys say that it's a genetic thing. I'd love to hear from you your explanation on what's up with the male maker or just sex determination in between with Gargs either way.
You know, I've had this conversation with a couple people concerning lychees in recently. When I lived up north, I lived right near Steve, so I didn't invest too much in lychees. Didn't make much sense to me, right? I couldn't compete with him no matter what. So I didn't do a lot of lychees until I came back to Florida. So I don't have the experimentation on lychees. All right. What I see in my collection so far, I've been told that they are temperature sex dependent. I'm not sure that I agree with that because I don't know. I see things in my collection that don't necessarily line up with that. When I was working with the Gargs, actually brings it up because I don't do experimentation like that anymore. The animals are different, and I really should pick up some of these and do the experiments again to see where we stand now. So yeah, in the beginning, man, to get a male for the first 10 years of breeding gargoyles was freaking impossible, right? Now looking back on it, you know, this was up in New Jersey where my temperature's getting up to 80 on a regular basis. They weren't. I was staying in the high 70s, right? So if temperature had something to do with it, you know, that could. But when I was trying to find out if gargoyles were temperature sex dependent, I bought incubators. I wasn't doing it on the shelf anymore. And I was playing, I incubated at every temperature I started at 65 and I went up to 85. Don't do either one of those. Everybody listening, do not do any of those. Okay. Don't do it. But in order to learn the species and understand things, right? I mean, that was what I had to do. None of my notes did I ever get any indication that temperature had anything to do with sex. For many years, I was my research group, I was holding back 300 animals. That was the number that I was. So I from the egg, I would sex them, once every week or 2 weeks. In the beginning, it was very often. Later on, it was a little bit less often. But I would sex them regularly, and I'd write it down, and wait till they were 2+ years old and see how accurate I was. And in all those years, I was seeing less than 2% male. Right. And even when I started experimenting, temperature never played a role. I mean, I would hatch out males in the low temperatures, low 70s, and I would hatch out males in the high temperatures. And actually, I would get more males in the lower temperatures than at the high temperatures. But once I had a couple years worth of notes and I started going back through them, the one trend that I did start to see is that the males seemed to come from the same groups repeatedly. And so when I started looking a little bit closer, now at that time too, my methods weren't quite the same as they are now. I didn't have as many animals, so I was experimenting a lot more. I did a lot more rotations, stuff like that. When I started looking closer, what I really saw is that they were actually coming from specific males. Like, it didn't have anything to do with the females.
Great
So
observation.
that's when we started playing with it and trying to go from in that direction. It wasn't until I moved back here to Florida that I started seeing the male makers. And what it was is there was one group, because I struggled to get nice males. And, when I'm doing groups, the male is the one that I'm really looking for to be the nicer animal. He's spreading his genes to a bunch of different girls. So I did notice that in one group in particular, in this one season, it was a group that I was really looking forward to the animals. So I was planning on holding back everything, and everything was a male. I mean, literally 100%. Every single one was a male. And I'm like, I've never seen that before. Where does that come from? And so Kelly, turns out at around the same time, she had a male that was doing the same thing. She had it with 5 females, and it was making 100% male babies no matter what. And so we played with them. We put them with different females, still got 100% male. So now we know that's where the male makers, the idea came from. Really was from those two
It's
males.
interesting. What just crossed my mind while you were talking about this is the damn mourning geckos again, right? Like, it would only make sense that those male mourning geckos possibly made more male mourning geckos, right? Amongst a population of animals that predominantly made female animals, right? So it only makes sense that those very rare males produce more males if you're talking about a wild population that's extremely female heavy, if that makes any sense.
No,
It's
that's right thinking.
that's
Go back to the beginning,
very unique.
right? Why, and how? All right. So
Okay.
let's just say what we know now is correct. All right. So gargoyles are only located on the lower 2/3 of the main island. All right, and they are. I'm confident they are still breeding into their 30s. All right, so we got a long-term, a long-living apex predator that's isolated on an island, and they're inbreeding. The females are capable of parthenogenesis. Again, Mother Nature doesn't do anything without a reason. They're capable of parthenogenesis. Why? Because what if there's not a male? All right, so when you're on an island and you're inbreeding, how do you get to that section where there might not be a male? I think the answer is simple, because it is naturally a female-heavy species. When they're living 30 years, they're capable of self-reproduction. They have no natural predators really after the age of 2 or 3. It stands to reason, and they're isolated on an island. How many? And one male can breed infinite number of females, right? So how many males does that population require in order to be sustained over the long haul? And in my mind, the answer is not very many. And I think that's also backed up by when you see the behavior of gargoyle males. At the shows, I always make a joke because males are focused, right? We've got one thing on our mind. Gargoyle males are like that times 10. They'll breed anything.
Yeah.
At the show, I was telling you before, I have all those displays out on the table. They're all girls. Because if I put a male on that table, he will breed every single one of them in front of 1 million people. It doesn't matter. Right, so they're hyper focused on it. That's male. All right, so here's where complications come into breeding, because the females, just like in us, the females control sex. The females are not always receptive. The males always want it. Doesn't matter. Even in the off season, males will breed. It's given the opportunity. right? But
Absolutely.
females won't cooperate during that season, so it doesn't happen usually. But yeah, so I think they are naturally a female heavy species. All right. And so let's say
That's obvious.
you did get these male makers in the wild. I think it would be hard for, okay, so now coming back into captivity, right? So we recognize these animals that are making males. Then my next question was, all right, so of all these males, how many are they all then going to be male makers, right?
Mhm.
Or how, how does that work? And so the handful of them that we did raise up, I don't want to say they were 100% male makers, but were they heavy male makers? Yes, they were, in fact.
Really? It would make sense. It would make sense.
No, it does. It makes total sense. But in the wild, but here's the difference between wild and captivity. All right, so in the wild, if this male's going around and breeding all these female, I have no idea, right? But I don't think the success rate in the wild is anywhere near what it is in captivity. You're on an
Yeah.
island where all the geckos are eating other geckos. So,
Mhm.
from 10 babies from one female, maybe in a season, maybe one survives, right? So if you have male maker and maker in the wild, the odds that those male making babies get perpetuated over and over again, I think, are not really high, right? But in captivity, we're keeping everything, unless it's completely deformed, we're keeping it, raising it, and then it is
Yeah,
contributing to the gene pool.
absolutely. These are some serious. I wish more people. I hope people are hearing you. I hope people are taking notes, and I hope people start to take more notes within their collections with their breeding
Do
projects.
more experimentation,
Yeah,
right?
man, because
More
a lot of
experimentation.
great things can happen. And I think that just from talking to you, some of the best, most amazing things I've heard, discoveries have happened from you taking notes and being strategic with your experiments and your pairings, and being super calculated with everything you do.
All right,
It's
so
a shame that there's people out there that just put animals together to maybe
just
make more animals for money, but it's nonetheless it's reality. It's what people do. I just think it's with a complicated species as gargs already are to understand genetically. Just keeping some simple notes and documenting some stuff on paper can seriously help the gargoyle community a lot.
it would be awesome if all the New Caledonian keepers, there was like a database or something where somebody
Yeah.
could go and input data, because one of the things about the internet, right? I mean, hopefully I'm not stepping on any toes here. Forgive me, people, if I'm stepping on your toes. But one of the things that gets me a little bit is, somebody who's got a pair of whatever, and then they get online and they preach to everybody else on how to take care of them, and what this means and what that means, and um, that's not possible. I'm sorry to all you keepers of a pair of animals, but that's not possible. You can't understand a species by keeping two animals. You learn those two individuals, but you can only learn a species by keeping many, many of them, right? And that's one of the reasons why I keep so many I used to keep 2,000 of everything,
100%.
two of everything. Now I keep 2,000 of one thing. That's why I feel like I know the gargoyles
I
inside and
agree
out.
100%. What you're saying with online, a database, the guy with two animals
Right.
can
Can
technically
contribute.
become part of the bigger
Exactly.
collection.
Exactly. So now full circle with the lychee idea, right? So I don't know. All right. So many things in the new cow world that I've heard are absolute. And like I said, you can't tell me without backing it up. I'm going to go home and I'm going to try it. I'm going to see for myself. I'm not entirely sure. I know there's a lot of people that are going to flame me for this, and they're probably people more experienced. But I'm not seeing temperature sex dependence in my lychees either. I don't think. All right. I'm not using an incubator, so it's not as exact as it was before. But my room here tends to be closer to 80 most of the year, with the exception of this time of year. I'm in the 70s, and I'm not getting predominantly males in my lychees, right? And so one of the questions to that too is how in new cow animals. I mean, I know it exists because in the bovia, all right, I'm quite certain they are temperature sex dependent. I see that in making male. But in the lychees, how is that a benefit to a Leachianus in the wild. New Caledonia's temperature is pretty stable all year round, right? And so let's just say you get those times where the temperature spike, right? I mean, because usually warmer makes more males, so you get a temperature spike. And what happens if, all right, let's go back to gargoyles and say I'm right with the female heavy species. It seems that Leachianus might be something similar to that, right? So what would be the advantage of getting a whole bunch of males in one season on an island in an isolated population? On a big continent where there's a lot more space and a lot more, it makes more sense. I don't know. To me, it doesn't make as much sense in this
It could
situation.
easily drive a species into extinction if you think about it.
Yeah,
If
it
you did it
could.
too much,
It could.
you'd kill off a population, especially on these smaller isolate, these isolar islands. I mean, you'd kill a population like that putting too many males up there. It's
I've tracked my Chihuahua over time, right? And
Mhm.
so in my Chihuahua, I have periods where I get males and I have periods where I get female. My theory is with the Chihuahua, I don't think they're temperature sex dependent either. I think what they might be doing, I think they might be laying 50-50 over the lifetime of the animal, right? And then sometimes they're female heavy, sometimes they're male heavy. And
I also incubate the same, but I've always had
I kind of wonder if that's the same thing as happening in Leachianus.
I wouldn't doubt it one bit. I mean, if it does anything, it leaves me with more questions, more curiosity. What more can I ask for? I love it. The second I figure something out 100%, I'm kind of done with it.
Well, but you know what? That usually leads to more questions, you know?
Yeah, yes. At least in this hobby, it damn sure does. You know, it's man, it's a super bright future for you guys, man. What do you think? Where do you think? I mean, I guess I could assume, but where do you see the gargoyle hobby in, like, say, the next 5 years?
That's
Do you
it
think
only,
some of this stuff gets unlocked for sure?
well, yeah,
You think we
certainly.
find the answers?
Sir, I mean, all right, so provided we're allowed to keep these animals in the future, absolutely. Absolutely. Like we were talking about before, back in the 90s, if you had said you had predicted the ball python and the leopard geckos would still be what they are today, there I would have bet everything against you. I'd be like, no way. They reached their pinnacle years ago. But something new pops up and it starts all over again. And you know what? It even goes beyond that too, right? So nowadays, again, we'll go back full circle what we were talking about before. In the old days, it was reptile enthusiasts almost entirely. Now it is everybody under the sun, right? So I see it at the shows. Every single show that I do, I get new people that come to the show that have never seen any of this stuff before. So as long as those people keep getting interested, it's endless. It'll never stop. It'll never stop.
I agree. I agree. I think the reptile hobby in general um has the potential to be as popular as cats and dogs, man. I mean,
Probably
just as
more so.
big. I mean, it's and the times are changing. That's like a double-edged sword. Maybe it's a silver lining. People that are coming to the reptile shows may not be the same type of people they were 25 years ago, but it could be a good thing. They're different types of people. They're different types of people that are broadening their horizon and finally accepting what was once a taboo animal is now the norm. And that's better for everybody that really has a passion or a reptile business, or even for the animals themselves. It's the more people involved. I know, as you can argue this, it's an ambiguous topic, but I guess the more people that are involved, the better it is for the animals, right?
Like everything is probably a double-edged sword, right? There's a good. You can't have the good without having the bad that goes along with it. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dan, we're at an hour and a half, Paul. I
We
keep
didn't even
going and
talk about
going and
half the
going.
stuff we wanted to talk about.
I know you ain't lying, man, and that's where I'm so like, but it'd be. Ugh. What's? Do you have any special projects like that you want to tell the folks about? What special projects are you working on in particular? Not the white stuff, let's say, but
Yellow
what have you
blotches.
been spending your time developing? What are you passionate about within the Gargs?
Yellow blotches. Trying to make yellow a
Yellow
pattern color.
blotches. I've never seen one.
You've seen the yellow spectacles some animals have, right? The bright yellow spectacles.
Yes.
Yeah. So the way that I see it, right, that the spectacle color has always been a pattern color. So it's
Okay.
typically yellow, orange, or red. and they're usually bright, a lot of
Very
saturation in
bright.
it. So the way I see it, the yellow is in the animal. It is there. It's just a matter of unlocking it and getting it to spread throughout the rest of the animal.
My female is orange, but she has bright yellow rings around her eyes, like almost like a Eurodactylotes mouth, like this color. Her eyes are bright orange or bright yellow, but she's orange. There's no yellow on her anywhere else except for around her eyes. It's interesting.
I want that yellow in
Mm,
blotches. Like
that'd be
you
amazing
can imagine a super blotch in that yellow.
with the maybe even a black, like canary yellow. That'd be wow.
Well,
That'd be
so
badass.
I was telling you the story about the customer that just contacted me about making the fix black and white. So I have to admit, man, she sparked a fire in me too, because
Really?
she showed me a couple pictures of like what she had in mind. I mean, I've seen that stuff before. It's not new, but it never. I'll be honest, it never occurred to me to expand on the pattern itself, right? To make
Okay.
that. I mean, I did manipulate the color black versus brown, but I've never tried to make that pattern that
So what
make it
pattern are we
heavy.
talking about? Like a mosaic pattern? Are we talking about the reticulation pattern or just stripes?
Pattern is the orientation of black pigment.
Okay.
All
So
right. So
what was she referring to with the what type of patterning was she trying to enhance or
she's looking to make that the black.
all the black? All the
Well,
black. Okay.
what she if you go have a look at my page, I just had my first baby for the year. It came out of my mosaic group. So the mosaic group is actually got one of Boris's animals. So that his
Okay.
what is he calling it? I think jungle is what he calls it, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a funky pattern. So it came out of there, but it doesn't look. I mean, the baby doesn't look anything like any of the adults. So I'm not sure where this came from, but it's a
Interesting.
striped animal. But the striping, the black part of the pattern, dude, it's really really thick and heavy, and it's like there's more pattern on the animal than not, if that
Okay.
makes any sense. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. So that's how I look at some of those clowns. Like if you think
the
about it, the
clown,
clown
that's what he's
pattern,
calling it, the clown.
it almost looks like the striping or the lining, it all consolidated and did its own thing. Like all the black came together and doesn't necessarily go straight down its back, and it's not in much other places, but it just consolidated kind of on the side. I can't even explain what I see that it does, but it's I bet you that's like a gene within itself, or some type of marker or blocker or something is controlling how that black is distributed.
Single Every single visual display that you
Is
see in any given animal can be bred for and refined
interesting.
without a doubt.
You ever see what are those skeleton blotch? You ever seen like those skeleton blotches?
Yeah,
Is that something specific, or is that just another like thing that's been isolated and like
depends on who it comes from.
so black and white one of those would be pretty badass, right? Like a straight black and white one would look like a real like skeleton. Those shirts they do, the black shirt with the white skeletons on them.
Well, but see, so the difference between those two. What is being referred to as a skeleton blotch is not the pattern; it's the color. It's the orientation of color more so than pattern. All right, so the skeleton blotches are all right. So if you look at blotched animals and you look at striped animals, especially animals that have pattern color, you'll see the orientation of that color. In the striped animal, it happens where those stripes are, right? Four dorsal stripes and then lateral stripes. In blotching animals, it's much more random. That color does not display necessarily. I mean, it can display in those areas, but it's not oriented like the striping is. It's much more random. So what's happening, what I see, at least in my animals, than the skeleton, it is the pattern color where it's mixing both patterns. So although it's not in the pattern, right? So the pattern itself is often a reticulated pattern, but the pattern color will manifest itself in a striped orientation and the reticulated orientation at the same time. So in the early ones, what you're seeing is the striped orientation is that dorsal line that goes down the back. And the reason it looks like a skeleton or the ribs is because of that. The blotching orientation is not in the same place that the striping orientation is. Follow me?
So it's almost like the two
Yes.
main
Yeah, it's kind of like
things
a
are
mix
having like
between the two. But
yeah, they're having like a problem with each other, trying to who's taking dominance here.
right, right. But the cool thing is it is doesn't involve pattern, right? So pattern, base color, and pattern color are three separate genetics. They're not necessarily related. But pattern color generally highlights whatever the pattern is, right? So in striped animals, that pattern color highlights the striped. In reticulated animals, the pattern color highlights the reticulation, but manifests itself in blotches. So those skeleton blotches are the pattern color manifesting itself in both stripe and blotch orientation. Now, I've had other animals too where forget the pattern color and you look at the stripe or look at the pattern itself. So it's just the orientation of black. And there are animals where it's also mixed, where the pattern is striped and it's reticulated.
I see why everybody that works with guards is like, and not that I'm not, but like I see why they're so infatuated, right? Like, cause it's all dawning on me now. I don't keep them or breed them the way you do, or a lot of guys do that have, a couple hundred guards. I don't. I appreciate the species. I love them. I keep them, but not to this extent. And I'm really just understanding. Well, I'm understanding nothing, but it's all of that not understanding that's attracting me to this. Like it's super interesting. You wouldn't think it was that complex, and I don't want to take anything from anybody, but with what you see in the mainstream, it doesn't seem that it's as complex as it is, but it's from what
Oh
we're
no.
seeing, it's exactly on why
Yeah.
it's as complex as it is.
So
It's
we're not even talking about disposition. We haven't even touched on that, right? So you asked one of the reasons why I like the gargoyles. All right, so their confidence right off the bat, and if you can talk to anybody that has an animal that's over 5 or 6 years old, and I guarantee the vast majority of them say, "Oh my God, this animal is the coolest and most laid back animal that there is." I think that mixed that personality, that confidence that mixed with the potential of color and patterns and everyone's personality is different, and these are actually geckos that you can play with without stressing them out and having them crash on you and all that kind of stuff. I think all of those factors are what drives the popularity for sure.
do you think disposition is an inheritable trait? Do you think that
Absolutely.
that's something that can be bred for?
Absolutely. Not only is it something you can be bred for, but it's something you can teach them. All right,
That's
so
awesome. I would agree.
I get comments at the shows quite often, right? So people come up to my table, particularly with the cressids, if they're looking for cressids because the cressids drop their tail. People come up to my table and they ask me, they're like, I've been walking around the show here, and I just got to ask you why when I come over to your table, not a single one of your cressids is missing a tail. They all have their tail, and so that goes into a whole nother explanation of teaching the animal, right? So we were talking earlier about how intelligent these animals are. They're all intelligent. Everything has a certain level of intelligence that we do not give them credit for whatsoever.
Absolutely.
But one of the things I think that separates me from some of the other breeders is my attention to the what's the word I'm looking for? The psychology of the animal, right? Understanding what the animal does and why it does it. If you understand those things, then you can talk to the animal and you can teach them. And it has to you have to be aware of body language, and they don't speak English or French, but you have to pay attention to your body language and pay attention to their body language. You Man, the things you can
I
teach them
agree.
just like my dogs. No, it's no different.
Absolutely.
No different.
Absolutely. 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 I could not agree more. I mean, I can even personally vouch myself with the crested geckos. I recently just, after all these years, just had two crested geckos that were paired together. Both first years being paired up, both drop their tails. They're the only two crested geckos in my collection that don't have their tails. When these things are babies, and I have a lot less than you do, but I'd imagine it's going to be the same idea. When they're born, I don't know how to explain it, but I let them know by playing with their tails and whatnot that I am not a threat. I'm not a threat. I'm not there to take their tail. I encourage them to use their tail, which in return, I also don't have a single animal with floppy tail syndrome. I make them, I don't know, I make them feel comfortable. I almost become like Boris says, their tree. I become their tree, and I
Absolutely.
give them I'm a jungle gym for them to climb on, and I encourage them to use their tails to, I set their cages up that way to use your body parts. But, so if I were to read, and I don't want to, and I'm not suggesting anybody does this, I could reach into my cage, any one of these crested gecko cages, and I shit you not, I could grab any one of my crested geckos by the tail and slowly, but I could convince them to come out of their bamboo hollows, and not one of them will drop their tail.
Yeah.
Not one of them will drop their tails.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
You know, they
it's
they 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 learn. All these geckos learn through experience, right? So because you're breeding and you hatch them, right, from day one, the second they come out of the egg, you are in
a
charge
hand.
of their experience, right? And as long as you
Absolutely.
keep that in mind, and you teach them, show them positive experiences and not negative experiences, they freaking learn fast.
I am the first thing they learn. You're not coming into a world where there's things buzzing by your head, dive bombing you, nothing. I am the first thing you encounter in your life in this world, and it's a positive interaction from day one. I never run into those problems. I don't have a drop tail of these idiots over here that must have been doing what they were doing and locked on each other's tails, because they both lost their tails the same damn night, which got me so mad. But you know what? They'll learn. It is what it is.
Dude,
But I try so hard for that reason. I go out of my way to handle them from when they're born and
so you
do
know what,
all of those
you know what the
things.
second part is for cresteds that I would argue for that. We were talking about the cage size
Mm-hmm.
and feeling
Yep,
safety, right? So
absolutely.
especially for cresteds. Now imagine this: cresteds are living in the treetops, top of the canopy for the most part. Leachianas tend to be right underneath of them. We know Leachianas are hunting them. This is why crested geckos, I think, are so damn nervous, even as full-grown adults. Because even as a full-grown adult, they are still on the menu for Leachianas,
Absolutely
right?
are.
So if this animal grows up, starts to think that everything is a danger, right? So this is how it happens in the wild. Then every experience, right, that they have to run from and they survive, then reinforces that idea. So you do exactly the opposite, right? So when you first take them out and they try to run, do not. I tell people the first thing, if you want your animal to trust you unequivocally, is the set of instructions that I see online all the time. When you get your new gecko, take it out, for 5 minutes a day in the beginning. For me, I hate that set of instructions because to me, you're more worried about stressing the animal out, which means that you're stressed out, which means that energy is transferring to the animal, so it is stressed out. But the whole purpose of taking that animal out initially is to earn trust, is to teach the animal that you can be trusted. And you can't, most of the time, you can't do that in 5 minutes. And
No,
definitely, you
you're
cannot
not.
do that if the animal is nervous. Or if the animal is in a negative state of mind, it will not trust you. So when you first take them out, you have to hold them and you have to interact with them until they calm down. I tell people, do not ever put a nervous or scared animal back, because
Facts. They win.
you're
Facts.
reinforcing that nervous, scared behavior. And you only have to do it once or twice, and they snap. I had a customer not too long ago. I was telling her to show. She recently got into the new cow stuff, and she's going crazy like we all did. She went from 0 to 50 animals overnight.
Like that.
She's got this is actually concerning a Chihuahua. She had a Chihuahua that was very uncooperative, and I told her, I was like, look, when they're babies and they're scared, they're watching your face, particularly your eye, right? So whenever you have an animal in contact, you don't want to, in order to get that trust, you don't want to relinquish contact. You want to keep contact with the animal, but you can't force it, right? So if they're nervous or scared, no looking, no talking, no touching. You just keep contact until the animal calms down, and then you push the boundary, right? And the biggest thing is when they're scared, don't look at them, especially if they're babies, because then they see you as a predator. And she called me up, I don't know, like a week later, and she was like, oh my God. She goes, you have no idea. I went home and I did this with my geckos, and every single one of them now will come out and just sit with me. And she goes, and the one that I was talking to you about, I take it out. As long as I don't look at it, it will just sit there. The second I look at it, he starts freaking out. I'm like, you see. So You can teach them.
Absolutely.
Pay attention to
And
your
they
body
don't
language and theirs, and you can teach these guys so
and they
easily.
can feel it. I don't even know how
Sure.
to explain it, but they could feel your tension, your it sounds so like crazy and
No,
hippie-ish, but it's
it
real. I'm
is.
telling you, they can feel your energy, man. If you're just cool, man, they're I really can't again, I can't even articulate. I wouldn't be able to explain this to people, but you just have to they're gonna give you whatever vibe you're giving them,
100%.
to a degree. Yes, some new animals, I guess, would freak out, but you can easily combat that if you know what you're doing and how to handle it. Like you can turn a spastic crested gecko into a relatively calm one super fast if you handle the situation correctly,
Yes, you can.
and you can damn near scar that animal
If you do it
if you
wrong.
do it the wrong
Yes, you can.
way. It's
Yeah, because they don't forget. They don't forget.
no, no. That's why I say it's super easy to calm them down forever if you do it right from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like they won't forget. They'll never forget. They're just. I mean, even these cages. I mean, it almost makes them sound like they're stupid. I can open some of these cages up and leave them open. For the most part, they're not going anywhere. They know what's about to happen. If they see like tweezers in my hand, they'll know where they're getting bugged. Like they're not. I don't even know how to explain it, but I tell you, they're not stupid. I've had animals and crazy because a lot of people use them and they're super nutritious. But silkworms. We did an episode on the Gecko Exchange with Beast Mode silkworm. She sent us a bunch of silkworms and was like, try these. So I'm feeding a bunch of crested geckos. Some are taking it, some aren't. Some are shaking it out of their mouth as fast as they taste the thing. They're flinging it. Take a day after, not even a day after, a minute after, feed them a super worm. They're smashing the thing, savage, shaking it all over, eating the worm. Right after, you'll think that they're in feeding mode, and they try to sneak a silkworm into his mouth. Not only will they not shake it out of their mouth, it's not getting into their mouth. Like they're not touching it. And I know that may sound like ridiculous to some people, but it's enough for me to know without a doubt that they're not stupid, right? Like not only do they have smell, taste, and vision, but they're putting it all together to know that I'm trying to fool them and give them something they know they just didn't like. It's just they're not these dumb animals, Again, and I hate to ever, I hate hearing people refer to them as stupid. It's like I had mentioned before that we live cushy lives as humans. We have a technology or a service to take care of any inconvenience in our lives. These animals do not. Their lives are one big, giant problem solving equation. It's all they do. You know, Rights, they deserve to be called or at least acknowledged more intelligent than we are. I mean, it's their lives are.
When it comes to reading people, without question, because, like you said, right, they reflect the energy of whatever. Again, at the shows, I get people. They see my display animals. Anybody can walk up and pick up any one of my displays, and of course, everybody wants an animal like that. So they're like, which one of out of the babies, which one of these are going to be like this? And I'm like, even you're handling my adults here. It wouldn't even be like this adult would be the same if you took it home because she doesn't know you, right? I mean, they're familiar with the situation. They know that they're going to be touched by strangers. They cooperate with it. But when you get home, whatever your energy is and whatever the experience is with you is going to change and they're going to behave accordingly. You know, the crested that I
Absolutely.
keep out on the table when I'm talking to people about, your energy and, you need, when you're handling them, stay calm, stay confident, don't worry. Don't be thinking that something is going to happen to the gecko, because if you're thinking something is going to happen to the gecko, it will, right?
A lot
Because
of people are like that.
well,
A lot of
you know what?
people are nervous, like, oh my god, my crested gecko is going to drop his tail.
And
I'm
it
like,
does.
it's like actually hard to unless you want it. Like it's not like, at least in my experience, and I guess yes, what I do is plays a part in it, but anybody can do what I do. They don't want to just drop their
No,
tail. They use it. Like you had to have done something seriously traumatizing to the poor animal, right?
staring at them with a
Yeah,
crested
make them
gecko.
feel like prey.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's eye with them. It's eye contact. You know,
There's proven studies behind that, though. Even with like mammals and humans, they say the reason we have eyebrows is before language was ever an articulated thing, that mammals were hardwired to read facial
face.
expressions given by the eyebrows and the eyes before we could ever talk.
Yeah,
So, in human nature, even human like us, but as subconsciously as it may be, we are designed to recognize a threat from a long ways away by body language, facial expressions and whatnot. It's just because they're reptiles, it's no different. Like they are hardwired to, they see you way before you see them, right? And they're already assessing you as you're coming. They're already assessing what's going on as you're approaching, and you're going to make yourself a threat
or
or
not.
or a friend before you get there.
Yeah.
So it's
When I see people at the shows and I'm trying to explain this, the one crested gecko that I have out, even though he's really good, he's a 14-year-old animal. He was a breeder for quite a while, most of his life before he started doing the shows with me. But he still got his tail, and he always was a good animal to begin with. He was a very level-headed gecko to begin with, but he's still a crested gecko, right? And when we're at the show, when people come up to the table and their energy is off, it doesn't even have to be nervous or scared. If they're, sometimes the kids where they're really hyped up, that'll do it too. And if I'm explaining it to somebody, it's pretty cool because I can take him and he's a perfect meter for it, right? And while I'm doing that, I'll explain what I'm doing and what to look for, right? So he'll be perfectly calm in my hand. And if I see somebody that their energy, I mean, I've been doing it long enough, man, I can pick it from a mile away too. If I see somebody's energy is a little bit off, all I have to do is take him and put him close to them, right? And his body language will change immediately and everybody can see it, even the person that I'm getting close to. And I'm like, you see, this is what you're dealing with. These animals are very, very aware. They're reading your energy. They're picking up your body language. They're watching your face. They're watching your eyes, all of that stuff. They are 100% aware.
Yeah. At least you can explain to people. See, I have a hard problem. Like I keep a lot of different species of geckos, and I keep tokays. And I recently just got this gecko that people call me nuts for, which I still don't see why, but a Halmahera gecko, those Halmahera geckos. And everything I'm reading is like about, I got it in a trade. I didn't go out and actively seek to buy it. Someone that I know had it and knew nothing about it. And he was like, listen, I don't want to kill this thing. Would you trade me a crested gecko for it? And I'm like, yeah, sure. He shows me a picture of it. He's like, it's a something, something, something. I was like, it's a Halmahera gecko. He was like, yeah, how'd you know? I'm like, I don't know. I guess I know what they are. I mean, it's it's not anything super special, but whatever. I was like, yeah, I'll give you a crested gecko for it, whatever. So I asked a couple people, and a few people were like, yeah, dude, you don't want to try to hold them. You don't want to do this. They're not this. You'll never find it. Like all these crazy things. Kind of like yourself, I question all the whys, right? So some that I get the thing, and I'm like it's not going to eat me. Like what? Why would I not hold this thing? I mean, why would I not try? And Paul, I had this thing eating out of my hand in 30 seconds. By just not by being respectful and calm. I don't know how to I can't explain to people. Same thing. Well, how do you hold your tokay? Well, first of all, I'm not unique, but second of all, I let the thing know that I'm not going to eat it. Like that's how I hold it. I'm not going to eat the damn thing. Like so, I hold her. Like it's.
No,
yeah.
in so what you're describing, one of the I often make the distinction at the show because it comes up with lychees a lot, but tokay conversations come up a lot too, and it bugs me when I hear people say this because in my effort to try to understand the animals, to me this is a really, really big deal, right? People come up and say the lychees, oh, those are aggressive. Tokay, oh, they're aggressive. And I'm like, no, wait a second. Before we go any further, you have to understand that neither one of those animals are aggressive. What they are is they're both very defensive, right? So the outcome is similar, but what is driving that behavior is couldn't be further apart. And so if you understand the driver behind that behavior, then you should be able to tailor your approach to that animal based on that, right? So if you think that animal's aggressive, this comes to energy. You think that animal tokay people, or I shouldn't say tokay people that are unfamiliar with tokays, right? They think it's aggressive, so they approach that animal in a fearful manner, and they think they're going to get bitten. They think they're going to do all these things, so they approach that animal in a very nervous, stiff, a predatory.
Gloves on over the back,
yeah,
trying like everything that a predator like you.
Instead of just reaching in and grabbing the animal. right? And so what I would argue, if you're even for a tokay, because I know a guy here. This dude comes to me at I got all my animals out on the table. This guy walks up to the table. I'm talking, so I don't see him walking up. He walks up. He's got a full-grown adult tokay sitting on his shirt, right? No leash, no nothing on it. It's hanging on to him. He's walking around in the crowd of people. He walks up to my table. All the people around him. The animal doesn't move. It doesn't flinch. So then I'm like, dude, we got to talk, right? Tell me what you're doing. And so we start talking, and he goes through all the same shit that I tell all of my customers to do, right? And it comes down to how you approach and how you would treat those instances. If the animal bites you, they learn through experience. And I know this part sucks because not everybody can handle it. I know it's not your nature, right? But if you're trying to earn the trust of the animal and the animal bites you, the worst thing you can do is respond, no matter what. The best thing you can do is pretend it's not happening.
Like it's doing nothing to you.
Exactly. Because if they bite you, they're doing it to get a response, right? So if you give them the response, then the action worked. They learn. They will continue to do it. If the action does not get the desired result, they don't continue doing it. It's that simple.
Absolutely. And you're talking about in my experiences, two of the higher, intellectually powered animals around. Lychees, in my experience, and tokays have, at least in my experiences, shown me some of the most intelligence I have seen in reptiles in general. I mean, almost on a monitor level, like I've watched them do things that are just like stupidest human could not argue that these animals aren't smart.
Oh, dude. We go into store for doing the shows and having the animals out on the table that people can touch and hold that makes opportunities happen that you don't see in other situations. I can tell you with absolute certainty. This is based on one animal, but if one animal can do it, they can all do. I had this one female gargoyle that this was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. It was after lunchtime. This little girl, probably like 7 or 8 years old, comes up to the table. And at this point, all my gargoyles are very used to people. Especially if your energy is good, it's not uncommon for them just to go right to you, to a perfect stranger, right? So this little girl comes up and she's holding the gecko. And I mean, you're aware of them enough. When they meet somebody new, they're smelling just like snakes with their tongue. They're flicking, right? So she walks up the little girl's hand and her tongue, and she's looking in all directions and she's smelling everything. And then, as hard as it is to believe, right, I'm watching them and she's flicking her tongue, and then it's like all of a sudden she smells something in her face, her eyes, her head comes back a little bit and her eyes get big, and she looks down at this girl's arm, and then she starts licking this little girl's arm. And so I'm like, what the heck? I've never seen that before. We let it go, and the gecko licks this little girl's arm for probably like 15 minutes straight. I mean, nonstop, like she's eating out of the food dish. And so clearly there's something on this little girl's arm, right? And I'm thinking, wow, that's crazy. So after this instance, then I start noticing every little girl that picks her up, she runs up their arm and she smells like crazy, and she goes right where your elbow is at, and she's looking for that smell. And so at first I'm like, holy cow, right? So she not only obviously remembers that and remembers that it's strangers, but then I start seeing the pattern. So when people come up, she goes to little girls first, always. Okay, so not little boy, she goes to little girls. So that can only mean that she can tell the difference between adults and children, and she can tell the difference between male and female. And she still does it to this day, right? And that's years later. So not only do they memorize, they remember that forever. But dude, I would swear to you, my animals, I mean, I see it in my dogs. Why can't everybody else? The dogs tell time. I mean, if you've got dogs, you miss feeding time. How many times does your dog come up and start begging you at 5 o'clock, right?
Listening to them now, trust me.
So over time, we started noticing a pattern in the show animals also, right? So now I maintain that my girls are fully aware of the situation. I like to say they understand it's a job. Maybe they don't understand it's a job, but they do understand it's something that we do regularly and that it takes 2 days. They have a sense of time. The stuff that they put up with, I always tell people they're amazed that I have the animals out there and I can leave them out there like that. I don't think that that's a big deal, to be honest with you. What is a big deal is that so many strangers, and especially with all
Yeah.
the uneven energy can come up and
Yeah,
touch
that's what I was
them.
just gonna say.
And
Imagine the senses that they're
yeah,
feeling and having to become comfortable
yes,
with. They are having to the sensory overload is it's
the stuff
like
they
that's
put
it
up
is
with.
amazing. It's amazing that they've learned to adapt to that
Yeah.
and to to know what's going on. And you're right, they absolutely know what's going on. It's
By the time we come, by the time we come to Sunday, they
mhm,
cooperate and they put up with everything for the entire weekend until we
yeah,
get after lunchtime sometime on Sunday. Not always, because it depends on how the interactions have gone. But particularly if we've had a lot of kids that are,
a little rambunctious.
yeah, rambunctious is a good word. Yeah, Sunday afternoon, they're like, okay, we're getting done with this. Yeah, I mean, dude, I got stories I could tell. I've seen them do things again, man. I'm telling you, I've seen them do things that if I didn't see them, I saw them recognize a whole bunch of girls that were
Mm.
coming to that were coming up to the table and playing with them. Specifically, one girl, she was very comfortable with reptiles, and she was obviously a leader in the pack, you know. So like when I'm talking to customers and they ask a question, she would kind of jump in and answer the question, kind of thing. And so she wasn't doing anything bad, but she was kind of really, um, she was, when I say swinging the animals around, I mean, she wasn't swinging them around, but she was, you know, if she was holding it and somebody said something, she'd real quick move it up. You want to look at this one, right? So she's kind of moving them around really quick. And but the animals put up with it, dude. They come over, the kids would come over and play with them for 10 minutes or whatever and leave. They did this all day long. At the end of the show, my table's kind of empty. The girls are running up to the table. The animals saw them from across the building. I have 7 animals out. All 7 animals at the same time left the front of the table. Right, so they recognize these girls from all the way across the building, from everybody in the building, and they didn't want to have nothing to do with it.
Absolutely. I can, that's exactly the type of thing I'm talking about, is like trying to explain that I totally get. They're knowing it before
Yes,
you probably even knew. They heard it.
yeah,
They knew exactly what was coming back this way before you could have even caught wind of it. They're already gone. Survival to a degree. They it's
it is
not
right.
that they were taking the girl as a threat, but they knew what they
Yeah,
didn't want to be bothered with.
right. But that's why in our earlier conversation, that's also why I would argue that not only do they recognize a bird as a threat, but I would
Individual.
argue that in that instance, they recognize the actual individual bird among all the other million birds in the sky.
I wouldn't doubt it one bit, man. I'd actually more than agree with you.
Yeah. Which
It's
then you sort of have to ask him like, wow, like how much intelligence really is behind those eyes, you know?
I think that humankind does them a huge disservice by not acknowledging how intelligent they actually are. I could keep going on and on and on about it. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I assure anyone out there that questions the intelligence of reptiles in general, they are way smarter than you're giving them credit
Yeah.
for. They can smell and sense things that we can't. I mean, they view the world in a totally different way, and
Mhm.
it's their problems may be different. The things that the things they have to troubleshoot are different than things we do, but it doesn't make them any less intelligent. I mean, if we were humans that had some of their senses, we'd be considered superhumans.
Well, what isn't? I guess that has to go back to what's your definition of intelligence, right? I mean, to some degree, the ability. I would argue that the ability to learn is,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
you know, because
absolutely.
I'm not very smart, and my ability to learn sometimes is horrible.
It's they're just it's super cool, man. It's good to know that other people do acknowledge these things. It's when you're in the reptile hobby. I mean, I guess you go to shows and stuff, but it's kind of like I don't have many people to talk to about these things. Like I come into here and I spend my time in my reptile room and I make all these observations, but like in my world outside of here at work and the gym and places, like I don't have anyone that I could talk to about these things. So I don't have anyone that would understand me explaining them to them. It's like, but when I do these podcasts sometimes or run into guys at shows or wherever on the internet, it's good to see that other people recognize these small little things. That they're not these dumb animals. I mean, and that even goes into, I guess, husbandry, right? Like you're walking to like a mainstream pet shop and seeing an animal in hell, you know, you think that it's just this dumb little animal in a cage with like everything's wrong. And I'm like, I'm sitting there like, and I'm not some tree hugger by any means or some super soft, soppy person, but I'm like, damn, like you're torturing this animal the same way I would if I see a dog in a freaking kennel in the pound. It makes me hate people. Like this dog's 4 years old. That dog was loyal as shit to you for all this time, and you did that to him. Like puts a real bad taste in my mouth towards human beings. And I get the same way sometimes when I walk into a reptile shop or a pet shop and I'll see an animal in a cage with whatever's wrong, and I'm like, damn, you just think he's that dumb that he doesn't know? Like it's
Yeah, most people
crazy.
do. Most people do.
It's messed up. So talking about husbandry, what if you could give anybody what's one big misconception that you would like to address with gargoyles in general, like as far as husbandry wise, maybe
Humidity,
the humidity thing or feedings or something
humidity.
like what's something if you would give someone one piece of advice like do this and like this is something that's commonly done, mistakenly done, do this and you're probably going to find success.
Two things. I mean, with gargoyles definitely specifically, but I go across the board.
Well, it doesn't have to be, but I would assume so.
Humidity, number one. Get um yeah, the idea of going from 80 to 50% every day. Um, so
Spikes, humidity spikes.
yeah, I also do a lot of gardening, right? So plants in a lot of ways are similar to reptiles, and that's where I take some of this from, right? My plants, they hate extreme temperatures, hot and cold. They hate being wet and dry, back and forth. And what I find in the animals, if they're a high humidity animal, they don't want to be dry. If you got a dry animal, they don't want to be wet. And although there's variances in there, right? But Mother Nature, especially when it comes to humidity and the moisture in the air, it doesn't change like temperature does. It's a much more
Agree.
stable, much more stability in it. The other one, the biggest difference that I fight against and advocate for is cage size. Smaller is better. Again, I don't preach that because I'm a breeder and I'm trying to save space, or I preach that because through experimentation I found it. Right? I mean, I put animals in big cages and I put animals in small cages, and I've kept notes on it. And it's the difference is night and day. Smaller is better.
Do you have any suggestions on? I mean, and this is strictly for like someone that's going out to get a gargoyle or maybe just getting into a gargoyle for a pet. Is there any type of what type would you suggest a plastic tub over a glass cage or what would you suggest a pet keeper that's going to get a gargoyle for the first time?
Usually
Any tips on
when I get that question, the answer kind of depends on what the keeper is looking to get out of the animal, right? Some people want the display in their living room. Some people don't. If you're not looking for a display, then for all the new cow stuff, I highly recommend plastic. It's proven to be way, way better, and it's better in every
it's a plus?
aspect except for visual, for display.
I would agree.
You can't make plastic tub look pretty, really. I don't know if that's possible, but it's better for the animal in every way, shape, form. They're not only cheaper, they're easier to clean, they're easier to maintain. Most of them are semi-opaque, which, in my opinion, is an advantage.
Clutch. Yeah, huge advantage.
You can ventilate them yourself, which I think the biggest advantage, because humidity. I preach humidity is the most important. Your enclosure needs to hold humidity, right? So I don't like the humidity spikes. Like I said, going from 80 to 50 twice a day. I want to see consistency in my collection. Yeah, so the plastic tubs are by far the best. The thing, at least what I recommend, is the plastic tubs, and ventilation, right? So like I was saying before, the biggest kickback that I get for preaching high humidity is respiratory infection and mold and bacteria buildup, and I maintain that that's a air circulation aspect, not a humidity aspect. Humidity feeds it, but it's caused by poor air circulation.
Absolutely is.
So with the plastic tubs,
Moving
you
air
can
is
ventilate.
essential to a healthy collection.
Yeah, yeah. You ventilate it. I tell people, make sure that you do your ventilation. Only do it on two sides. On one side, do it as low as you can put it on the tub, and on the opposite side, do it as high as you can put it on the tub. And yeah, that seems to work the best. And small.
It does for reasons that I can't explain, but it absolutely does. By the way, air works. It comes in low, goes out high, or vice versa. It creates some type of, and I know there's a name for it in like the
Convection.
aerodynamic world, but there is.
Yeah. Heat,
Works
the
perfect.
heat and humidity rise, right? So in any enclosure, the humidity rises with the heat. So as the day progresses and it warms up, the heat goes up. And under that design, that the hot air goes out the top vents and automatically pulls fresh, cooler air into the bottom vent. It promotes circulation, but actually holds humidity at the same time. Then you don't have to spray, right? You don't have to spray as often, because the one caveat, so here's one of my pet peeves. Okay, so the 80% to 50%, the way that I see that came about in the early days when we were telling, and I'm guilty of it when I made my first care sheet, we're telling people you got to be in the neighborhood of 70, 80%. But if you're doing that with a squirt bottle in a small enclosure, you're wetting the cage, and then that wetness evaporates, and that's how you're getting humidity. A wet cage, kill. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
That is definitely bad.
The way I explain it to my customer, so they can understand the impact. So going again on my theory about how the skin works, I think the skin is thin. It works like a sponge. It's absorbing most of their body moisture from the air. All right, and there's plenty. You can put them in a sauna, right? Soak them, and you're going to see it for yourself how that works. So if the cage is wet, here's the problem: if their skin is like a sponge, and the cage, the surfaces of the enclosure are wet, then their body is absorbing that water, whatever they're sitting on. Now, the problem with the wet enclosure is the same reason you get mold and bacteria and fungus and all this. They're pooping and they're peeing on everything. So if the surfaces are now wet, then all of the bacteria and all the stuff from the feces and the urine and all this stuff is now in the water. And if they're sitting on that water, they're absorbing it. Now they're absorbing all of that stuff back into their body. And so that's how you get skin infections, all these respiratory infections and all this other stuff. So you want high humidity, but you do not want a wet enclosure. So our first care sheets were, spray it to get it up to 75% humidity, and then you have to let it dry out because people were wetting the enclosure. And somehow the evolution of that care sheet turned into 80% humidity and let it dry out to 50% humidity. That wasn't the intention of the original instructions. That was let the cage dry out, right? Now we have the problem where people are bouncing between 80 and 50%, and their gecko doesn't eat, and it doesn't do this, and it doesn't do that, and they don't understand why. But every source that you go onto on Google or everything says 80 to 50. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one.
So how do you suggest, what do you suggest someone does to keep the proper amount? Is there a substrate, a water dish, the proper ventilation holes? How would you suggest to somebody or recommend to someone to get that perfect balance of humidity with the lack of saturation and wetness, if that makes sense?
Well, yeah. Well, so in order not to get the saturation, don't spray. Right. Again, because when you're spraying, you're putting the water on the surfaces of the enclosure. So my customers, I recommend a fog well over a spray bottle or a misting system, because you're putting the humidity right in the air. Cage selection is going to play a role, right? Avoid open tops.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and with a fog, you can put them on. They have the technology now. The light timers, those digital light timers, you can program it to go for 2 seconds a day, 20 times a day. So with those things, you can maintain 75% humidity all day long and never have a wet cage. That's ideal.
It's an easier way. I mean, I'm blessed. I'm sure you probably have something similar, but I have a designated room. I got a big old humidifier in here, a humidifier, air purifier, air monitor, air sensor monitors, particle meters, and all types of stuff. So I get to control a whole room. But not everybody has those luxuries, and I often come across people experiencing the same issues. They want this super high humidity, and the only way they think they can get it is by soaking their tank, soaking the enclosure. And it's just like I always have this. I have a hard time explaining to people that like soaking wet doesn't mean humidity.
No,
like
it doesn't.
it's two
Two
totally
different
different
things. Yeah, two totally different things.
So, what would you suggest for? We didn't really talk about this with yourself either in your collection. What would you suggest for someone that's just getting into gargoyles for a feeding regimen and supplementation? Are you supplementing your animals? Do you use any particular calciums or vitamins or maybe color enhancer stuffs, whatever guys are using with gargs? What would you suggest for a new gargoyle keeper?
I feed predominantly Rapashi product. That's what I recommend to everybody who buys my animals. Again, not because I prefer it, because I've done experiments. Right, I've taken groups of animals and raised them on specific diets over long periods of time and tracked it, among other things.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying anything bad about the other diets. Rapashi, and again, going back, to my day when I was working with Alan, I know I know what Alan went through to create the diets. I know the research he did. I know the studies that he did. Yeah, it's especially for the carnivores. Rapashi is by far the best diet to go.
I only use Rapashi myself. He did a good job of making me feel comfortable with everything that he's done and his research and his time and his work. And it's just tried and true experiences. Like even his Cal Plus is like the only supplement I use, the calcium with the vitamins and stuff. Like I try to feed a good diet so that I don't need to like overly supplement with all of my animals. But I'm again, like yourself, I'm not bashing any other company. I have just been super comfortable, confident, and had great results with Rapashi. I have zero reason to change.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing between Rapashi and the other diets, we talked about this earlier too, is the sugar. Right, especially when we're talking the gargoyles and the Leachiana specific. Show me evidence that they're getting sugar in the wild. Like we see them on the diets in captivity, and will
Some of the
change my
diets
mind.
and mounts, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And there's one thing I'm not a fan of is a fat reptile. I think it's so unnatural. Like I had mentioned earlier, and on plenty of previous podcasts, famine is much more natural than fat.
yeah,
Like it's so much more natural for an animal to go an extended period of time without a meal than to be fat prey waiting to be eaten because it can't get out of its own way.
agree.
And I think that sugar is what's
What's a lot.
probably leading cause to obesity in captivity. Because I promise you, it's not chasing around a cricket for a half hour that's getting them fat.
I would agree it's sugar, and I have other evidence to back that up. That's another conversation.
Do you suggest any type of like feeding regimen, or is it more just like on an individual animal basis? So you feed in like, would you suggest, for a new keeper, someone, feeding, mix twice a week,
Yeah,
once a week,
good,
3 times a week?
good question. Right, so a couple things that I do different across the board. Right, one thing I realized a long time ago that no two gargoyles are the same. Right, so one of the sayings, just because it works for 10 doesn't mean it works for one.
Absolutely.
So ideally, you base everything on your individual animal, right? You watch your animal, listen to the animal, and
Great
base all
advice.
of that stuff on that animal. Feeding wise, I feed mostly Rapashi. As far as I'm concerned, the supplementation by nutrient wise, the Rapashi at least 99% of the total pack. Calcium would be the one thing that I'm going to differ on than 90% of the people. I do calcium with D3 on freaking everything. I don't subscribe to the overdose idea.
Either.
No, I mean if you go back and read Rapashi's original study, when he was doing experiments to build the diet. The
I
one that
agree with
I should remember the details. I don't. It's been so long now. But one of the groups that I make note of is the group that he did. That was like 5 or 8 times. I don't know, something like that. The amount that recommended calcium. And he did that for, I believe it was 8 or 9 months before he stopped that group. And there was no difference in body weight and production or any of that kind of stuff between the animals that got the recommended dose of calcium, the 5 or 7 times or whatever. So essentially, you got to be, in order to get that, and I think it's important too, right, to make the distinction between calcium and vitamin D3 and what we're giving them, right? So the powdered supplements that we're giving them, it is a mineral. It's not necessarily the same thing they would be getting in the wild. So I don't think they can overdose on D3 or calcium quite so easily as most people believe.
I don't either.
If they could, if it was that easy, I'd be seeing it all over the place, and I don't. Um,
Probably have a bunch of dead animals myself
yeah.
personally, but
Now, what I think could happen is if you're feeding a lot of the supplement, can you get a blockage because of somehow the animal is unable to process the powder? It's or there might be too much of it in the system. It gets blocked. Can that happen? Yeah. But I don't necessarily think that that's an overdose on the calcium or the D3. So I do, especially for my breeding female, this time of year going through most of the summer, I do put calcium D3 on all the diet dish. Basically, food is available in my collection 24/7. My goal, what I'd like to do and what happens in reality are not always the same. I'd like to swap it out every 2 days in my collection. The reality is that's not always how it happens. Sometimes it goes a little bit long, but basically the food is available 24/7.
have you ever found, and I have, not with, every gecko is unique, but I've had geckos that won't touch their food the first night, right?
Sure.
And they almost destroy it the second when it like almost ferments a little
Yeah,
bit. Sometimes it'll swell up a little bit, and that's like when they want it. Like it's so I usually never take it out the first night. If it's still there, I won't take it out. I'll leave it. And some of the animals actually, I swear to God, wait for it to do that
agreed.
before they eat it.
I tell people to take it out if it dries up or if it gets moldy. If you
Starts
start to
growing
smell
mold.
it ferment, do not take it out for that, because I would say the same. It's not 100%, but a large portion of the animals seem to prefer it when it's fermented a little. And okay, so I asked why for everything. Why? Makes sense. If they are eating fruit in the wild, they're not picking it off the trees. They're eating the stuff that's already hit the ground and rotten away. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and in the beginning too, right? I get a lot of weird looks for this one, but I tasted everything, and because I realized, right, not all the animals were liking the same stuff, and so I needed to understand what was the driving force behind that. Why? What were they going for? And so I started tasting everything I was feeding. I don't know if our taste buds are the same. I would imagine they are, because I think our sense of smell is the same. But if our taste is the same, I don't believe they're going for taste anymore. What is the driver is smell. If it smells good, they'll eat it pretty much regardless of what it tastes like. But it has to smell good.
Yeah. Interesting. What if how do I word this? If there was one, is there any one flavor do you use? Like, what if somebody couldn't have access? Like, somebody lived in a place where there was a pet shop that only carried basic flavors. It's still fine to just use the one flavor, right? Would you mix anything with a diet? Would
If I had to pick one for gargoyles, Rapashi bugs
you?
and
Yeah,
grubs.
bugs and grubs, bugs and grubs.
Now,
I actually, I don't have that right now. But actually, that's pretty. Yeah, that one usually goes pretty good because I do find certain flavors go more than others. Like that fig frenzy, just about everything I have destroys that fig stuff.
yeah,
My lychees love it.
and the fig is good, right? So we were talking about fruit and the sugar and all that kind of crap. There's another aspect to that a lot of people don't pay attention to. All right, so everybody's familiar with MBD, metabolic bone disease. Most people will say that it's a calcium deficiency. Over the year, I used to say that all the time. Now I don't say that anymore. I think it can happen in two different ways. What I call it now is not a calcium deficiency, but a calcium phosphorus imbalance, right? So phosphorus is like, think of phosphorus as being like the calcium blocker. It's the negative to calcium's positive. So you could be giving the animal calcium and D3 all day long, but if the diet is high in phosphorus, then the
Not
animal's
absorbing.
not processing that calcium and absorbing it. Now, when it comes to the diet, especially the more fruit-based diet, almost all of your fruit are very high in phosphorus and very low in calcium, with the exception of fig. Fig is super high in calcium and low in phosphorus. So I grow
You know
figs
this
here.
myself. Huh.
I feed my animals fresh figs because of that. It's
Well,
a
figs from iNaturalist. I know it's probably not the same figs that we eat, but one of the few, not few, but one of the plentiful fruit trees that actually grows in New Caledonia is a fig. It's a
oh, really?
type of fig. Swear to God,
I
yeah.
didn't know.
It's a fig. Yeah, right. An iNaturalist. It's actually one of their biggest exported fruits too. Is fig. New Caledonia makes a lot of money exporting fruits, I guess, and figs like the top one. But on iNaturalist, if you go on there, there's a native type of fig. They're really small, But I'll send them to you later with some of the pictures I send you. But yeah, I read all about them too. But fig is one of that's the reason I usually lean towards it when I'm buying a lot, because I'll buy the fig because of all the flavors I have access to. It's like one fruit that naturally grows in New
Right.
Caledonia is some
Interesting.
species of fig.
Okay. Yeah. In the beginning, I did a little bit. Granted, my research skills aren't the best, but I did some research and I couldn't find any information on, um, you know, fruits that are endemic to New Caledonia. Everything that
Figs.
came up for fruits was something that was introduced by me.
There is a lot of them, yes. Like from what I read myself too, most of them are, but one of them, the endemic ones, was absolutely a species, a type of fig, and it produces a fruit. It's not like a fig plant of some sort that doesn't grow fruit. It grows fruits. They're just a smaller type, and they grow in clusters, almost like grapes do. They grow in little clusters, but they're figs, and
Well,
they eat them.
I mean, I'm sure New Caledonia has several types of endemic fruit, right? So what I was assuming when I was first doing the research on it, because I couldn't, again, maybe I wasn't looking right, but I couldn't really find anything on endemic fruits. So what I was kind of assuming was that, and I know there's got to be something out there, but what I was assuming is more than likely the reason I couldn't readily find information is because whatever is endemic to New Caledonia is probably not consumed regularly by people, or if it
Mm.
is, it's not exported, right? So
Yeah,
it's probably something that stays on the island.
you'll see when I send it to you. Nah, it's nothing that humans we wouldn't need it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, which means okay,
but
so
imagine
if we're not eating it, it probably means it's not sweet.
facts. I'm almost curious. I mean, you grow figs, you said, right? I'm Italian. Like my family, that's my all the old heads, figs everywhere, right? It's what they do. Now, I'm not so sure that over the thousands of years that we've been growing figs, that they're even the natural form anymore. I'm sure the sweetest plants have been picked for the sweetest plants and the sweetest plants. So it's interesting in itself. But yeah, it's always a big hit, the figs. So, all right, we are coming up. We're coming up on the end now. It's almost, yeah, it's almost, it is 11 o'clock. So I would love, like we didn't even have a chance to barely get through half of the information that's in your head. I would love to have you back. I know the guests are racking up the questions. The second this airs, I'm going to get a million questions on why I didn't ask this, why I didn't ask this, why I didn't ask this. I got so mind blown with the genetics and the knowledge you have on genetics and your observations and the things that you've done. And I'm one to question everything. You made me question myself. You've made me question things I thought I've known. I mean, the morning gecko thing is blowing my mind. I can't tell you, I'm 41 years old. For 40 years, I thought they were only females, and that was it. Like how is the reptile hobby? And I don't think 85%, I don't know anybody in the reptile hobby that breeds geckos. Maybe Richie from the Gecko King, maybe one of these
No,
guys
I'm sure
knows that
Richie
there's
knows
males,
about
but nobody is aware that there is male morning geckos.
it. No,
Like
there.
that's amazing.
Well, you all right?
It's
So
amazing.
that goes back to circle this around with the Chihuahua, right? To the new cow. Okay, so forgive me for I'm not into the loop of what's common knowledge in the social media anymore. But several years ago, Chihuahua were pair bonding. I don't know if that's still a common belief.
Well, it depends on what I guess your definition of pair bonding is. I keep mine in pairs, but I don't think that they give a fuck, you
Right.
know?
So yeah, if you say or from my take on it, right? When I was first going in, I was like, oh, they pair bond. You're gonna have to take a long time to find a suitable pair and all. Pair bonding to me, I'm thinking of like what parrots do. They bond and they breed for life. Yeah, so I'm like pair bond. That show me another. That doesn't happen very often in geckos. So I come home and I play with it. They don't pair bond.
Yeah.
I took a male. I cycled him through several females one season, and it worked. I did groups of Chihuahua. Not again, these things I don't recommend doing.
Would agree 100%. I got a buddy that I don't remember what we talked about. He was also on the podcast, but he bought a bunch of super expensive high end animals during like the peak of pandemic. Like this kid owns a business, so he had a lot of money to spend. But he only bought one super high caliber male, and he put him through all of these females that he had. I don't know anybody to date that's had more of a success their first season breeding animals than this kid did with one male and probably 8 different females. He ran that male through every one of them, didn't have a problem one time. Not one time. Every one of them laid eggs. Every one of them is a stunner. I mean, these things are damn near all white, these animals. Stunners. And again, when I first started doing it, I was listening to popular belief, right? I waited, and I'm not suggesting anyone does anything differently. I waited till my animals were like 3.5, almost 4 years old before I bred my Chihuahuas. My buddy Justin bred all of his animals at about 18 months old in a specific weight. I don't know if it was like 60 grams or whatever he was shooting for, but much younger than I would have.
He might
No
pay for that
problems.
later down the line.
He might. And I brought this up to him. I said, you might, you might pay for this. But he was waiting in the beginning. He was waiting for some animals to lay duds. Is how it went. He was like, I was getting a female, and she should have been laying duds, but she wasn't laying duds. And I'm thinking she's not laying duds because she doesn't have a male around, so she's not producing eggs. And blah 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 blah. The second I introduced a male, she was laying fertile eggs, and he had a reason. I don't want to quote him on everything because I definitely don't want to put words in his mouth. But again, sometimes I get thrown for a loop. I mean, I didn't do it. I waited. I spent a lot of money on my Chihuahuas too, and they've become. I don't want to sound like a weirdo, but my babies. I
No,
love my Chihuahuas,
absolutely.
man. They're my, and I'd be crushed if one of my animals died because of some idiotic shit that I did and was impatient, and I'm just not willing to do that.
I don't think that is going to kill them per se, but
Shorten their life.
does it shorten the life? And yeah, I would argue that it does. And again, with some of the experiments I've done, just doing a little bit of math on them, a little bit can make a big difference. It's this the same reason why I would argue against breeding. All right, so here's another thing that I don't like in our world. I don't like how all the benchmarks are dictated by weight, right? So breeding when it gets to a certain weight, I hate that idea. And it'd be like your wife. I'm not sure if you're married or not. Let's just say, right? Your wife goes to the doctor because you always want to have kids, and the doctor says you can't have kids because you're not 775 pounds. That's ridiculous. Right? It's a matter of maturity. It's not a matter of weight. And
Absolutely.
and so many people are trying to get these animals by 60 grams by 2 years. All right.
It's force feed.
My other problem with that is I would use humans as an analogy. All right. So when I used to preach, the idea used to be once she starts laying eggs, they're ready to breed. Right. And almost always I would follow that up. All right. They're ready to breed it too. But your first year breeding, don't expect good eggs. Don't expect 2 clutches every time. Don't expect a clutch every month because it can be very random. It can be hit or miss. All right. And so when I started waiting until after 3 years, all of that went away. I no longer have those problems. And so the analogy that I would make concerning that, comparing it to humans, all right? My daughter got her period at 11 years old, 10 years old, when she was 10 years old. All right. So if I go by the rules that all these guys are doing for our geckos, then that means she's ready to breed, right? No, she's not. Right.
No,
So
you're
I would
not.
argue that these geckos, just because they ovulate, does not mean they are ready to breed.
Absolutely right.
Ovulation is when the reproductive system just comes online.
Just getting on
Yet
fire. Yep. Absolutely.
it is
Absolutely.
not developed yet. It is not mature. And that's why in these
Absolutely.
animals at 2 years, you have hit and misses all the time.
Absolutely. I tell people the same thing, Paul. Trust me, I'm in the same boat. Like I said,
Yeah.
I waited 3.5, almost 4 years.
Yeah.
And my scale, the most my scale has ever weighed is the dust that it collects. I think it's a look. I can look at, there's so many more factors. I don't care necessarily what the animal weighs because they're smaller animals. They're smaller, naturally mature animals. There's so many different factors that are involved in when telling an animal's ready than any
Wait.
than just weight, than even just age. Because I've had animals at 3 that I was just like, I'm not
100%.
really comfortable. You're all the way there yet, like you're still growing, like you're still showing me that you're doing something. I'm not gonna. You're just not ready. So it's there's just so much more to it.
I had gotten to a discussion with somebody online one time because the question was asked, like, where would you put the life stages of these animals? Like, what years would you put the life stage? I saying that I wouldn't call any animal an adult until it's over 5 years old. They're not, and it's not
Yeah, I
based
would
on
agree.
weight. It's not based on reproduction. What I base that mostly on is actually their behavior, right? So if you've raised enough animals over a long period of time, you will see a change in their behavior at certain times,
Confidence.
right? Yeah, the confidence. Gargoyles, they're scared, they're nervous until they're about 2 years old. When they're about 2 years old, they start gaining that confidence, right? And they become more bold and they're less scared. By the time they're 5, they don't give a shit about anything, right? And it's a personality difference. It's because they've learned and they're not on the menu anymore and they don't care. Anything that's less than 5 years old is definitely not an adult. And 2 years old, in my opinion, that's still a baby. Yeah.
Young.
I mean, even when changing cages, I get the question all the time, you know, because I tell them to start them off small. Generally most animals, ideally, you're probably going to go through 3 cages for the lifetime of the animal. But you can do it in 2. Ideally, I think 3 would be better off.
Probably.
People ask, well, when do I change it? And that's another thing that goes by weight. I hear all the time at 15 grams or 20 grams, and I don't do it by weight either. Because going back to the understanding of the environment, right? We were talking about that earlier. And, moving a tub from a bottom shelf to a top shelf, they have to reacclimate. So I don't like to move my animals because they get used to where they live and they don't like that change. So when to change them in my collection is not dictated by size. It's dictated by the disposition of the animal. A more confident animal can change earlier than a less confident animal. If you have a
Absolutely.
nervous animal, I wouldn't change that until you absolutely have to, until you have no choice.
Absolutely. Goes back to what we were saying, even to be, well, we touched on it on many topics, but knowing your animals,
Yes.
paying attention to
Paying
your
attention to the
animal.
individual.
I mean, and not just like little, nuances with them, like you weigh this much, you're this old, you're this, like, look at the animal collectively, eating habits, habits in the cage, daytime, nighttime, bathroom habits. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, these are your animals, guys. Pay attention to them. These are your investments, your obligation and your responsibility. Pay attention to everything they do as if you had a child. I mean, honestly, I always tell people, and I make the joke, like, people talk about certain things, and I always say I'm like the parent. I'm the nosy ass parent to a bunch of teenagers. I'm in all their shit all the time. I could tell you where, out of 200 geckos I keep, when anything is off. I could tell you who sleeps where, who does what, who's eating what, what's normal, what's not normal for 200 animals. And that, God, that's nothing on what you got. But I make it a point to know everything that's normal. It's also, and again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I personally have bought every animal in here. If I didn't breed it, I bought it as a baby. And I bought it as a baby so I could learn these animals, so I could
Learning,
learn
yeah.
everything about them from as young as I could get them until they were adults, so I would know when something was odd. And again, I don't expect everyone to be able to do these things. They're just little things that I do that have helped me. Like everyone else will come up with their own little tricks and things that they do over the years to help them along the way better, I guess, But I believe in paying attention to your animal. They're going to tell you everything, not hypothetically speaking, a book, your neighbor, a breeder, the pet shop. Your animal is going to tell you everything
Yeah.
that you need to know. Your animals will.
In our early days, Kelly and I, we had a couple of disagreements because she'd come over and she'd want to help me get through the animals quicker so we could go do whatever we were going to go do. And I always gave her crap about it. I don't. It in the beginning, she took offense to it. Right? She's like, I know what I'm doing. I'm like, baby, it's not like I don't think you know or you don't know what you're doing. It's what I get out of keeping the animals. It is watching them and making those subtle changes. And the only way that I can do that is I have to have my hands on them every single day. I have.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, I love it, man. You're so much more than what all the rumors said, all good, obviously, but I mean, I've never heard a bad word about you, man. All I've ever
Also,
heard is how much information you have, how much, knowledge, how cool you were, how down to earth, the experiences you have, the experience you have. I mean, it's this was such a pleasure, Paul. Like honestly,
Thank
like I really was, man. I learned a lot too, man. Honestly, like I learned a lot this episode, man. And I'm intrigued and inspired, and I'll probably be looking at more gargoyles after this.
I'm going to see you next year, and you're going to get rid of everything and have all gargoyles.
Well, my Chihuahuas, I don't know. But I will say, it's definitely like it was never not a possibility. And I'll always tell people this because I have some good friends that work with some really, really badass gargoyles. I don't feel that I could bring more to the table than you guys are. And so, with that being said, I know my place, right? Like with crested geckos, there's more morphs, there's more genes, there's more traits. I can mess around. I make things all the time that I don't see anybody else do. There's little things that I do that people say, "Oh, I would never do. I would never mix a red with a yellow." Some of my coolest lilies have come from like red and yellow lily pairings, like, but I was told from the beginning to never do it. Like, they're
Those are
fucking
the
cool.
things that I do on purpose.
See?
Don't tell
See?
me not to do.
See, exactly my point. Now you see where I'm coming from. So with the Gargs, and not that there's not a lot out there, but with the caliber and quality that I see, I can't contribute. Well, at least until before today. I'm not saying it in a bad way, but I never thought that I could really add to the hobby or bettering the animals. So I just always said I'll keep my couple as pets because I like to, observe all of the levels of New Caledonia and, animals that may inhabit different areas of the same rainforests. Or jungles. I like that. I like, to watch the observations and the very different behaviors, right? Because as much as people say they're like crested geckos, I'm sure
No,
they
they're
are.
not.
There's a shit ton of differences
Yeah.
too. There's a lot of things that are different. So I keep them the same way I keep the Saracenorums. I love my Saracenorums. I love my Chihuahuas. I love New Caledonia. And for that reason, I keep them, and I'll always have gargoyles. But setting off I may this time, like I said, I may actually try to do something now. I don't know. I've literally been inspired by some of these things that the hobby just doesn't know. I want to get on board because with that type of stuff, I'm not saying I can make a better looking animal than you or anybody, but I might be able to help you figure out, right? I might be able to, probably not with the way this conversation went, but I might be able to contribute something with observations.
I disagree with that, dude. I think that every person who puts two animals together has the ability to contribute and perhaps even create something new. All right, so the example I was telling you about the young lady that I was talking to earlier that wanted to increase the pattern.
Right.
All right, so that's not something that I've ever considered to put into my breeding process. When I moved here and Kelly and I first started dating, Kelly had a pretty good gargoyle collection too. And the more we talked and the more we got into it, the more I realized that although there were some things that we were breeding for that were similar, but there were a lot of things that we were breeding for that she was breeding for things that I'm not breeding for, and vice versa. Right. So this young lady that I spoke about earlier is another good example of, right. So we look at the high degree of polymorphism in these animals, and you look at all of the different traits that are out there. Every single one of those can be refined to
Yeah,
whatever your imagination can be. You know what
absolutely.
I mean?
That's what I'm saying. You inspired me with that, with the isolating the traits or genes or whatever they are. I can do
Yeah.
that. I can do that. I can,
The
I
more
feel
people
like I
that
can
do that,
do that.
the more crazy shit we're going to see.
And ironically, I don't, you know, see nearly as many gargs as you do, but I love the oranges, right? And I don't see a whole lot of them,
That's my favorite.
but I do love them. Like mine are orange, and I love these orange things. So maybe,
The trick
who
with that,
knows?
there aren't as many orange ones as there are red, right? But we talked
Yeah.
about how I think the color works. The trick to the oranges is reproducing the orange.
So oranges are making reds then, right? So you take two oranges and in theory, with what you said, you're gonna get reds out of that by stacking the two oranges. So I wonder if you took an orange and a yellow or something that's different. You gotta like reverse engineer that. You gotta reverse engineer the red somehow.
It doesn't work that way. I've been trying. So I told you
Really?
my goal, one of my goals is a yellow block.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can get yellow pattern, and I have animals that are reticulated. All right, so when the animal, so see if I can explain this the right way. If you look at an orange blotch, all right, and then you take away the orange, there won't be any color underneath of the orange. All right, so what you would be left with is a reticulated animal with pattern is the dark color, okay, and then you'd have spots where those blotches would be. So what you would have is you'd have, say, like a yellow base animal with the splotches, but it's missing pattern, right? But they're not actually blotches because it doesn't manifest the same way. So if I can get that yellow, like I said, in the into the body, then that's where we would be making the yellow blotch. But it's not going to go in.
Funny, that's what she looks like when she's fired down. When she's fired down, she's like a like super light gray with the yellow. The yellow doesn't go anywhere on her eyes. The yellow stays, but she has just these spots, like these black spots where the pattern was, but the gargoyle bands stay. It's like, nothing unique or anything, but it's interesting you say that. That's what's
I've tried to breed those to orange, right? Orange animals, orange blotches, and orange stripes, hoping that the yellow that I already have established blends with the orange, and I get a brighter, a brighter yellow was the goal. It doesn't. That's another one of the reasons why I say I think it's the same set of genetics, because it does not work that way.
Or it's happening the way you do. Because you know what I have seen? I don't know if it's necessarily yellow, but almost that yellowish orange, like when they're young, like a stripe will have, and as they age, it turns to red. You know what I'm saying? Like you'll see that orangish yellow that as they get older ultimately turns to a red. So it's kind of like fast tracking what's happening genetically, right? Like, or has happened over time is we've taken those colors and forced them to this, but it's happening like a short period of time on the same animal. Because I saw one time, I think I was asking Bobby from Gecko Cove, and he had this animal. I was like, "Is that thing going to keep that color? Like that thing's super cool." He's like, "No, it will probably turn red." I was like, "Oh, interesting. Why does that happen?"
No, that's why does it happen? It's another one of my questions, right? So you look at the gargoyles and you look at all the bright colors that are on them. Why do they have all these bright colors, right?
Why do
what are they trying to blend into or trying to hide? How does that work? Now, one aspect that I never considered until today was the UV, right? How do those colors look under UV? So that might be something to pursue. But here
interesting?
at home, one day I'm walking with the dogs. We're going through the woods. There's a park over here that I take the dogs to all the time. Let them run off the leash while I'm staring into the woods looking for whatever I can find, right? And so I'm walking down the path one day, and I come up on this bunch of trees, and they got fungus and mold all over. And the fungus and mold is bright red and orange. And crazy enough, the pattern of this fungus on the tree is very similar to the orientation of the blotching on the gargoyles. And I thought, oh my God, that's what they're blending into.
Shit.
Right. And so in this same patch of trees, not only was there red and orange and even like yellowish fungus, and most of them are red and orange, but on some of these trees, there were big white patches. And I'm sure even up north, I've seen that on trees, right? The white fungus.
Lichens, like the lichen on the
Yes. If
Chihuahua?
you ever look at the Chihuahua, the crazy thing is, I have these pictures on my phone in this patch. The shape of this white fungus or whatever it is on the trees is freaking identical to the patches on Chihuahua, both the collar and the pelvic region, right? So yeah, it hit me. There's probably a lot of lichen and fungus growing on
What
the
it is?
trees there, and that's what these guys are blending in.
Absolutely. I think that makes perfect sense. I never even thought of that myself, but you're absolutely right. Because what else would be that color red out there? And I pretty sure I know the type of fungus you're talking about, and that would look just like a red blotched,
It's the same color that's on the
reticulated
gar.
blotched. That would be exactly it. No shit. Damn. You're
I'd love to
brilliant.
go to New Caledonia and look for, what. All right, so
You and me both.
here's another one that caught me, right? So a lot of these are just, assumptions because of based on what I see and asking why. So one of my questions that's always perplexed me. All right, so all the new Cal geckos are capable of tail automation. All of them grow back, except for the only one that uses tail automation as a primary defense.
Think
So
about it all the time.
why? I mean, Mother Nature doesn't do anything without a reason, so the reason for not having a tail has to be greater than having a tail. And so I'm at a show one day, and I'm this comes up, and I'm like, my theory. I mean, I don't know if it's right. I'm just guessing off the top of my head. Crested geckos are found at the treetops predominantly. If your threat from the air, or if your major threat is from the air, then a very good defense from an aerial threat is profile, right? Smaller profile is better than a larger profile, and a gecko without a tail, half the size of a gecko with the tail, right? And so I'm talking to this gentleman, and I don't really know who he is. We're just into good conversation. And so I said, my theory is, aside from Leachianus, I would bet that crested gecko's number one predator is something in the air, a bird of some sort, right? And he looks at me, he gets his eyes get real big. He goes, I happen to be a biologist, and I specialize in plants and birds. And he goes, and I've been to New Caledonia. He goes, did you know that there's a predatory crow in Caledonia that is 100% a carnivore? And I was like, no, I didn't know. And so I don't know if that the reasoning behind it, but if you have a crow that is 100% carnivorous, then on an island where the largest biomass is gecko, I'm sure he's feeding on geckos to some degree. And yeah,
Yeah.
that could make sense. That could be why most of our wild crested geckos don't have tails.
Interesting. Because I have, Paul. I've thought of it myself too. I'm like, out of all these species, the one that technically, I mean, other than the Chihuahua wrapping its tail, like that uses its tail the most, the crested gecko doesn't grow it back.
Right.
But yet all of these others do. Like, and I'm a huge advocate myself. Like, Mother Nature does nothing by accident.
Mm.
What the hell is happening here? That these things don't grow them back. But
Yeah,
I
well,
bet you're
the
right.
answer, whatever the answer is, all right. So again, think like you said, a prehensile tail. The crested geckos who live in the treetops. You would think that a fifth digit is indispensable. I mean, that right. I mean that's got to be a highly
Absolutely.
valuable tool. And so, whatever the
Absolutely.
reason for not growing it back is more valuable to the animal
Outweigh.
than that tool. And survival is a pretty big one. And so I would imagine it has something to do with survival.
Absolutely. I'll be up all night thinking of that one now. I pride myself on finding logic in things. Like, I always look for like the most logical explanation, and I'll run through thousands of scenarios, right? Like, I mean, to the point where I'm looking at trees, plants, animals, everything that'll be on New Caledonia again. I'll come up with everything and try to logically come up with a reason on why nature would allow or not allow this particular thing to happen. And I've done it before, and I can never come up with a reason. And now I'm going to look at these animals and then think of the profile thing, and what are they blending up to? What are they blending into? Losing the tail breaks up the profile of it being the animal, right? Like,
So
without the tail, does it break up the profile of an animal that may only see in black and white? Like, do crows actually see in just black and white? Is not having that tail making it a more natural pattern to where the crow doesn't see you anymore?
maybe having the tail in that situation too is a greater threat because maybe it's an attract.
That's what I'm saying. Absolutely. Absolutely. It would look so unnatural. I mean, from a bird's view, right? Like, if what I'm envisioning in my head is correct, you would stand out like a sore thumb, as opposed to a crested gecko, big old head, fringes, breaking up any definitive line, no tail, spread out onto a branch. You look like a leaf. You look like you look like a piece of bark. You look like
Yeah, and then it gets even a little more ridiculous when you think about when they don't have a tail, right? What's their escape strategy? Their escape strategy is to blindly
jump and
jump,
dive.
put all their feet out, and just blindly jump, right? So again, you would think under that scenario, having a an extra digit to grab onto something would be
Yeah,
indispensable.
be interesting. There's some great topics, Paul. Great conversation, man. Again, dude, I can't thank you enough, man. I
I
hope I can
appreciate
get you back on sometime, man. I really, really do. I would love to. It's almost hard talking to you about any one thing because I get distracted by top by top. I'm like, dude, he's got so much information. I mean, I could go on, for
The kind that
hours
doesn't
about
shut
just
up. So
one
be careful
thing.
what you ask.
Brother, listen, if there's one thing I could do, it's freaking geckos, man. Talk geckos forever. I mean, I just never run out of questions, and especially again being guards and me not knowing so much about them. And I just have this passion and hunger for knowledge. Like I would love to learn, and who better learn from than one of the best in the game, the best in the name. There's not many people been doing it as long as you. With the experience and the numbers that you have, and I mean, like I said, I got some good friends that are guard breeders. I haven't got information like this from them. I mean, I talk to them all the time.
I don't think. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's others. I don't at this point. I'm trying to think of maybe Steve. Steve's been doing it for a long time, but he doesn't concentrate on gargoyle.
There's no one as big as you, right? Nobody's doing
No,
gargoyles
not in the gargoyles.
anything like you're doing. Not even David. Not even at Tiki's. He's got his hands in so many other things. He's not. Nobody's. I don't think anybody's doing it the way you're doing it, dude. To be honest.
Once I told you, I realized that I couldn't learn a species by keeping only a handful of animals, and I switched. Yeah, that changed everything.
I can
Not
only
only am I
imagine.
breeding because I'm taking advantage of numbers, in breeding, but I'm also it gives me the advantage to be able to when I have a question I can experiment and you know
That's awesome
not
itself. The
destroy my
value
breeding
of
project.
that. Priceless in that. But with that comes huge responsibility. So for all you guys out there, don't think just going out and buying 100 geckos that you cannot take care of is going to do anybody any justice. This
No,
is Paul's full-time job. This is what he does for a living. He's been doing this for my lifetime. Like, don't just think because you hear someone keeps a bunch of animals and has discovered all of these things that, and no disrespect, but that you guys can do it. You can't just wake up tomorrow and become Paul. Like, you can't. So if you're going to grow, do it smart, do it at scale. Don't take on anything more than you can handle, and learn what you have before you just keep on going.
that would probably be one of the biggest piece of advice I would give for keeping period.
Yeah.
Because I've been to that point when I was working doing Sandfire, I was breeding my own dragon, and I was producing probably 8,000 dragons a year, and working a full-time job at the same time.
Cool.
Right? I got burned out.
Yeah, I'd imagine that. I've had accidentally, well, I wouldn't say accidentally, but I've had clutches of dragons, man, and damn, one clutch itself is a handful. Like a handful.
No, dude, I was getting up back then. I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning and feeding
Mm,
dragons until 6:30 when I had to go to work, and then I'd come home from work, make dinner, and then be out there till like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning.
jeez.
And still, then my wife at the time would help too in the places where I couldn't fill in. But yeah, it was a lot of work, and I got burned out. I didn't keep reptiles for several years after that. I got rid of everything, and I missed it terribly. And I promised myself that no matter what happens, I would never get overwhelmed again. Which is actually one of the things that put me into these guys because I mean I can do 2,000 of them myself.
They definitely are less, and I'm not trying to knock what you're doing or anything, but they're, in my opinion, a lot less demanding than bearded
Yeah,
dragons are,
yeah,
right? Like bearded dragons and it's almost a shame. I really want to get into it, but it's almost a shame that the industry or the hobby portrays them to be as easy as they make them sound like. Like just walk into Petco, pay $60 and walk out and you'll have a pet forever. Like they require like some significant care, right? Like the
yeah.
heating and the feeding and the everything that I do with my animals. Like, dude, you you shouldn't be suggesting every 10-year-old or 5-year-old on the planet gets a bearded dragon, man. Unless mommy and daddy are on board, there's no way in hell that kid's doing the crap that got to be done. You know?
They're great pets, but the maintenance on
Yeah,
them it's a
serious. It's granted again, I only have the two, but those two take up more work than damn near my Chihuahua rack
sure,
does.
absolutely.
I mean, easily. All right, so I got one, and you probably answered it. My closeout question to every guest that I have is always the same thing. This one may be a little more significant for you because you have much higher standing, I guess, in the hobby than a lot of my guests have. It's because you've been around so long and everything. If a 10-year-old kid came up to you at a show and said, Paul, I want to grow up and do what you do. I want to do what you do for a living someday. What advice would you give that child that wants to grow up to be a full-time breeder, contribute to the hobby, and pretty much to be as close to you as one could imagine being?
Love it to death. That's
That's awesome.
if you don't, I mean, most of the keepers are experiencing this right now, right? Because there's highs and there's lows. All right, imagine raising an animal for 4 years, right? And a unique individual, only to breed it, and then it dies in the first 5 minutes of being paired with another animal, and you built a whole project around this one animal, right? So those things happen.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, you want to hear a really bad, a learn from your mistake event. All right. So go back to my days with the dragons, the translucents. All right. So I told you I was sitting on this animal and I didn't tell anybody about it for quite a while. And I go to breed it, and the first clutch from this female is hatching. Right. I'm anticipating it. So every day I'm checking the incubator, and I go in and I open the incubator one day and half the clutches, and every single one that I can see is translucent. Every single head is translucent. And so this is my first real triumph in breeding. I would call it my first real success in making anything significant. I'm freaking out, man. I'm so happy. I'm crying, dude. I've never in my life have I cried being so freaking happy. All right. And this was before, wow, this was like right in the beginning of the digital era. So I think I had just had my first digital camera. So I go downstairs, I grab all the babies and take them outside, and I, rack up a whole bunch of pictures. In my rush to go upstairs and download them on the computer and look at them, I take all the babies, and it was like a dozen babies that had hatched that I was taking pictures of. I had them in a 6-quart shoebox. So this is when I'm in New Jersey. All my dragons are down in the base. And so I put them on my workbench in this shoebox, and I run back upstairs to the computer and down and load everything. And I'm, going through the pictures, and I'm up there for, probably like 2 hours. I'm going through all the pictures. I mean, blowing them up, looking at every detail. And finally I'm done with the pictures, and I go downstairs to go put the dragons away. And I open up the dragon, and the 6-quart shoebox is on the floor upside down with no lid on, and there's one baby underneath of it, and there's no other babies around that I can see. And about, I don't know, 20 of my adults are all parked on the ground, on the floor, or wherever, and, all looking with big fat smiles on their face. So, with the exception of my breeder enclosure, all of my dragon enclosures, all of my animals that I was raising up, because they're light lovers, they're in open tubs. There's no tops on the tub. And yeah, so I put this 6-quart shoebox with a little baby, and you've got dragons, you know how they are with their feed response. So,
You there? Can you hear me? Oh shit. Maybe it's better we didn't hear that story. I feel bad, dude. That's like game changing, world's first shit, and he lost it. Oh my god. Let it go to tell you, kids. If you want to breed, be careful, because you just might find yourself in a situation that you may not want to come back out of. Know plenty of guys that had some devastating losses like that too, and never got back into reptiles again. It's super heartbreaking. I don't know that we can get him back. Share? How do I get this? Share. All right, guys. I think we lost him. Technology is about a bitch. He was a great guest. The man is a wealth full of knowledge. If you ever get a chance, or I'm sure you already do, go check him out at Rack House. I'm sure he has a Morph Market Instagram page. Check him out on Facebook. Super cool, man. Super cool, man. Super full of information and knowledge. I came into this hobby, man, looking up to this man, and I don't even breed gargoyle geckos, and I've heard from day one how smart he was, how observant he was. I mean, the man is a plethora full of information regarding probably all types of things, but at least I know gargoyle geckos, and apparently now bearded dragons too, which it's funny full circle that the man was like one of the first hands in originating translucent dragons, and I keep translucent dragons this many years later. Super, super cool. Again, go show them some love. Huge shout out, Paul. I'm sorry we lost you. I appreciate you coming on so much, dude. Like, it was amazing talking to you, and I hope I get you back on here again. Again, guys, check him out on all social media platforms. Check out his Morph Market. Check him out. I'm sure he's at every show down in Florida. Brilliant man. Incredible animals. Always willing to help. Until next time, you never know who I'm going to have on here next time. Set the bar high. But it'll be somebody good. We'll talk about something interesting. Obviously, a new cow species. Check out the Gecko Exchange podcast as usual, where we're there every Sunday, recording something unique and awesome with someone unique and awesome. Stay healthy, stay happy, keep your animals healthy and happy. And I wish every single one of you nothing but the best, man. Shoot for the stars, man. Later. I stop recording.